Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm keynote speaker and the host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. Now, when I speak, my topic is something that I call Take the Doughnut. It's another way to say carpe diem for me. It's all about going after the things you want in life. And of course, what I wanted to do this year was rewatch Halt and Catch Fire, but this time talk about it with other people. And here you are. And oh my goodness, there's been so much feedback coming in. It's such an embarrassment of riches these days. I can't wait to get into all of it. And today we're going to talk about season 2, episode 8. This one was called Limbo. It originally aired July 19th, 2015. It was directed by Daisy von Scherler-Mayer. Hey, remember when we interviewed Daisy von Scherler-Mayer? She shared some really cool things about this episode that will seep their way into my feedback here and there, but be sure to go and check out that interview as well. It's also written by Zach Whedon. And here's the description. Mutiny hosts a party for their user base just in time for the release of their newest game, Extract and Defend. Joe marries Sarah and resigns from West Group. A paranoid Gordon fears that his newest business idea has been stolen. My goodness, does this miss some important details, but that's what we are here for. So, well, okay, so that's a description. Before I get into the scene by scene breakdown, though, I just wanted to highlight, in case you missed it, what was the interview this past week? It was with Sam Lazarus. Now, a number of you have been asking, I've been seeing word on the street that people have been really keen to see me do some interviews with folks from Mutiny, and Sam is the first, and it looks like it's going to be the first of many that interview. So it's a great way to kick it off. Thank you so much to Sam for being so brave and sort of jumping into it first and sharing some really cool stuff from behind the scenes. So be sure to check that one out. But let's talk about this episode. Let's get into the scene by scene breakdown. Now, first of all, we're going to start with Cameron in her office. She's continuing work on programming Extract and Defend. We're going to see her reflection in the screen. This is a thing that I've been really enjoying. We've been commenting about this. There's been feedback about this. We've seen a few different people trapped in screens so far. This time it's going to be Cam. And her face is kind of behind the programming of Extract and Defend. We're going to hear, as we're looking at her, the song Spinning Around by Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, which when I was writing it down at first, I wrote Red Larry, Yellow Larry. Don't try to look that up. That's not a song. So we're seeing all of this. We have a close-up on the screen, and then we're going to see a close-up of a hand comes into the frame. We don't know who that hand belongs to yet. But this is actually something that's going to resonate again at the end of this episode, where we're going to see Donna's legs approach Cam and she starts the conversation that way. So I really liked that we're getting that echo in the beginning and the end. And we've mentioned before that sometimes these episodes start and end in a way that sort of mirrors itself. And for me, that's a detail that felt the same way here. So Donna, we see her hand. We're going to then see all of Donna. She's going to cross her arms, and Cam pauses. She sees Donna. She takes off her headphones. If you remember where we left off, Cam had made a decision. She had talked with Joe. Joe gave her a heads up that she should back out of the deal because Jacob's probably going to get rid of games, and it's not going to be the vision that she wanted. And Cam comes back into the Mutiny office and just says, we're not selling this company. It's my decision. It's my company. And walks into her office and leaves the whole room standing there shocked. So she's reckoning with that for this entire episode. And it's the kind of thing that if you haven't really been sitting with this, it's easy to forget. I actually think this maybe plays better on a binge than it would have played week to week, because it's almost easy to forget the awkwardness of where they left off. But here we are, and it's weird. And Donna is the first one who's approaching her about this. Maybe it's the first person we've seen. Cam says, Joe told me that they were going to mess with Mutiny. And Donna says, and now you decide to believe him? Cam says, yeah, he was telling the truth. I could tell. Donna just scoffs at this. She's incredulous about it. She's like, Kim just says, I could tell. Are you mad? Donna says, well, yeah, I am. I wanted to sell, and I'm not the only one. Basically, she's saying an entire room full of people out there wanted to do the same thing. She says, but you completely disregarded that based on some mysterious feeling you got off the one person you told us never to trust. I want to pause here for a second because I also went and I watched the inside the episode, and there's this feeling that suddenly Cam's trusting Joe, and it's this really big like sort of turnaround. And I actually don't see this that way, because at this moment all of them think that Joe is still involved in West Group. Like they're still under the impression that Joe is a figure in West Group. And the one thing that we do know about Cam for this entire season is that she's wanted nothing to do with Joe. So Cam, in this moment, believing Joe and trusting Joe's judgment over everybody else, the end result of that is Cam gets out of business with Joe, which is in line with everything we've seen from her this season so far. It was sort of just like Joe giving her the reason to go with that. Like, so this fight that she wants a different thing than everybody else at Mutiny, like literally everybody else at Mutiny, but it is consistent that she does not want to be in bed with Joe. So I don't know how much I agree with people's takes on that I've been hearing so far. This seems in line with what she's been doing, but against the rest of her team. And this season, she's mostly been working on the same page as her team. So that's my take there. Now, so Cam's, are you mad? Donna's like, yes. Cam leans in. She says, I'm not going to apologize. Donna sort of purses her lips, like, mm-hmm. Cam says, is that going to be a problem? Donna just shakes her head. No. She starts to leave. It's a little bit of a problem still. You can tell it's a little frosty in there right now. Donna says, well, when we're able, I think we should find another network. Cam's going to agree with that, but she puts her headphones back on. Donna's like, well, it's time to get out of the Joe McMillan business. Cam agrees. Hear, hear. Like, finally. And she goes back to coding. So now we are going to go to Jacob's office. I don't know if this is a scene where the blocking and the decor are accidentally perfect or on purpose perfect. We're in Jacob's office. Sarah and Joe are sitting on the sofa. Jacob is sitting in an armchair sort of across from them. And first of all, the way we see this, the camera angle and the way this is blocked, when we first look at this, we get an angle that makes it look like Sarah is sitting on Joe's lap, but she's not. But I do like, it's just weird and awkward, and it's sort of offbeat, and it made me be like, wait, is she sitting on his lap? And it's all appropriate for this because Jacob's pretty taken aback. Apparently Sarah just said, hey, we got married. Not we're engaged. We got married. It happened. Like, it wasn't, we set a date. We want to invite you. It's like, hey, guess what? Just so you know, it's already happened. You missed it. So Jacob said, the scene starts and Jacob says, when? Sarah's showing the ring, and she says, this morning at City Hall. Jacob is just stunned. Sarah says, we wanted to tell you first. Jacob says, why would you do that? Don't you think this is something I'd want to know about to be there? Hey, Jacob, here's what this means. They didn't want you there. They might have known that you wanted to be there, but they didn't want you there. Like, it is a bit of a funny conversation. I guess I'm giving my take on this before I'm even sharing the scene. It's a bit of a funny conversation because Sarah's sort of being like I don't know if she's feigning that she's oblivious or if she's actually oblivious. It's like, yes, this is an insult to your dad. And yes, Dad, it's an insult. he's right to be upset, but also it was their call and they decided they didn't want him there. So the repercussion of that is this conversation. Okay. So Jacob's like, don't you think I'd want to be there? Sarah says, we wanted it to be the two of us. So we're still blocked in this way. The camera angle is still the way that it is, where I just said it looks like, Sarah and Joe are sitting right next to each other, almost like she's on his lap. Joe's smiling. He's like, ha, gotcha. Sarah's pretty serious here. She's like, oh, I don't know if I thought that it was going to go this way. So the other thing that's interesting about this angle is that, yes, it looks like Sarah and Joe are especially close in this scene, but they are all the way on this side of the frame. There's all this room over here. It's just weird and awkward and uncomfortable, this whole scene. I love every choice. So Sarah's like, yep, no big party. We just two people in love. We just wanted to do this, just two of us. Jacob looks disappointed. His head's down a little bit. Sarah says, don't be upset, Dad. Now we're going to go to the wider shot. And it's Joe and Sarah on the couch still, underneath I think Evan calls it 3 potatoes and a carrot. I call it 2 against 1. They are sitting on the couch underneath the 2 against 1 painting. Jacob is sitting, in our view, to the right of them, as the 1 potato is, as the 1 circle is in the 2 against 1. On the same side as the one that's in the painting, that's where Jacob is placed. And look, I can't imagine this is something that was especially planned out on the day. It's like, there's a couch, there's a seat across from it, you put them there. It works really well visually. So, okay, so now we're gonna get this wider shot. Sarah's like, this is good news. Jacob says, oh, I'm happy for you. It's just, you're my daughter, Joe. I'm sure you can understand why I'd want to be at my only daughter's wedding. There's like I don't approve of you in this moment, Joe. Joe's like, we meant no disrespect. Jacob says, well, you seem to be making a habit of springing things on people. Defiantly, he says this, except it's great when it's directed towards other people, just not when it's directed towards Jacob himself. Sarah says, well, we did this together. Like, you're not throwing Joe under the bus on this one. But Joe's not smiling anymore. She's like, this was not inflicted on me. In fact, it was my decision. You can see between this and the dinner table scene she had with Joe and Jacob in a previous episode. She's like, I am here. This is not about you and Joe. Like, I'm here. I made this choice. She says, why are you making this about you? I just told you I got married. You should be happy for me. Yeah. Yes. And it is a bit of a slap in the face what you did with him. You probably know that. And he is reacting the way you would think he would react. But yeah, this is about their decision and not about him, but he's going to make it about him. That's to be expected. Jacob says, I'm sorry. Congratulations. He gives a little weak smile. To both of you, no smile. It's really good choices from James Cromwell there. Sarah's like, thank you. Jacob's gonna continue with the pained smile of it all. And she says, if you'll excuse me, I'll go tell Caroline. Maybe I'll get a better reaction out of her. She touches her dad's knee and leaves. I looked back and I made a mistake in a previous episode because I think I said that maybe we've heard Caroline's name before. I believe we heard Sarah make the excuse when we first met her dad at the airplane hangar. And she introduces Joe and her dad. And then she says, I'm going to go talk to Caroline. And he's like, she hates Caroline. And then we get the refrain of it here. And I thought Caroline was like his significant other. I guess Caroline could still be his significant other. That's not her mom. But I for sure know that Caroline seems to be his assistant. She is the woman who gave him the waffle iron or the waffle maker in a previous episode. So Caroline's his assistant, and if she is also his significant other, that just says everything that you need to know about how he feels about the women in his life. But I wanted to make sure I put that out there here. Okay, so Jacob says, I take it there's something else you want to discuss. Sarah can't stand Caroline. And Joe's gonna laugh here. He sits up. Yep, it's true. There was something else he wanted to discuss. And Joe says, as much as I appreciate the opportunity you've given me here, I think it's time for me to move on. Sarah and I are moving to California. Jacob mouths like, oh, like this is mildly inconvenient, but not so inconvenient because you just being here and releasing all of this information to me makes me furious and I want to do something to retaliate. You can see it kind of all crossing around in his brain. Joe says, I'm sorry to lay all this on you at once. And Jacob's like, no, you're right. Maybe it is time to move on. He's going to shake Joe's hand. No hard feelings. Best in luck in your future endeavors. I feel like, as an Italian, I feel like there's some sort of like evil eye or curse that's happening here. I don't know. Would Jacob always have done this? Would Jacob have done this if Joe were still working there and if Joe didn't just do this move with Sarah? And if Joe didn't go behind Jacob's back and basically tank the deal with Mutiny. I don't know if Jacob knows that he did that, but he kind of probably does because it's a very Joe thing to do. So I don't know. I feel like Jacob does all the stuff he does in this episode to retaliate against Joe and just like stick it to him. I mean, maybe that's too juvenile a thing for Jacob to do. Maybe he just saw the potential earnings here and he wanted to do what he wanted to do. And Joe just happened to get out of the way at the right time. But it does feel a bit like this is Jacob just saying, oh, you're going to do all this? Well, watch what I'm about to do. I don't necessarily think that Jacob's above that, but I'd be curious to know what you all think. So Joe is surprised at this, like, oh yeah, okay, see you never reaction. And Joe says, well, I'm happy to help you find a replacement. Jacob's like, no, that's okay. I'll leave it up to our people. They'll find the right guy. Like, out of here, get out. See you later. See you never. Joe says, okay, well, I can stick around until you've got someone in place. Jacob laughs. He's like, don't be silly. I couldn't give my daughter a wedding. At least I can do is give her a honeymoon. Reed, please leave immediately, if not sooner. But said in the nicest possible way. Joe bites his lip a little bit. He's been pushed out the door now, which is okay because he opened it for himself and he was starting to walk out. Jacob says, tell you what, ask Caroline for the keys to my private garage. There's a 57 Bel Air convertible in there. It's pristine, ready to go. Joe folds his arms with a smile. Maybe Jacob is okay with me. Maybe this is approval. Jacob says, take it for a couple weeks, hit the road. Joe smiles. I'll talk to Sarah about that. I'm not going to be doing things behind her back. He says, thank you. Joe goes to leave. He says, sorry, the mutiny deal didn't go through. Jacob says, I've been in this game long enough to know things don't always break my way. Enjoy the honeymoon. Joe leaves and he's looking a little vulnerable and he is a little vulnerable and Jacob's going to eat him for lunch here in just a moment. But first, let's go to Donna and Gordon. They're asleep in bed, kind of in the spooning position, but asleep. And we're going to hear a creak of the floor or maybe the door. Gordon wakes up. Only he hears it. He shifts in bed. And then the creaking comes closer. We're going to see a handheld camera approaching Gordon like some sort of figure is approaching him. And it's a little horror movie-esque, all of this. And then we're going to hear like sort of a psst, and it's Jules. Gordon wakes up. He's awake. He looks. He sees Jules. Jules says, hey, Gordon. He screams and turns on the light. Jules isn't there anymore. But Donna's awake now. She's like, what the heck? Gordon says, sorry. He turns off the lights. He's recovering his breath. She's like, are you okay? What was that? He says, nothing. It's nothing. But he looks disturbed. Lest we forget, he cheated on Donna. I think when you put that reminder in the context of the rest of this episode, I mean, Gordon's a mess. Gordon is such a mess. And it's so escalated from what we've seen in the past. It's like it feels like, yes, he's got a problem with his brain and he has this diagnosis, but this feels like such a fast progression into chaos for him this episode that to me it feels like that can all be attributed to the diagnosis he received. It feels like an emotional reaction in part to the diagnosis that he received. And how you pull apart which is due to what is almost impossible to do. But I think that any symptoms he would be experiencing here are significantly exacerbated by how he's feeling, his emotional state around everything that's going on with him. So we are going to see another important part of this episode is the mutiny party. So we're going to see it being set up here. We're going to start, it's daylight. We're getting, we have a white banner that's been spread out on a bunch of gravel in the driveway of the backyard. And somebody is spray painting a red sign onto that banner. And it says, "Welcome mutiny users." We pull back, I think it's Archie that's painting it. And the guys are setting up the mutiny backyard. There's a hot tub that's full of ice and kegs. There's tables that are being spread out. We're going to find out there's a barbecue going on here. And we just see that scene, and then we go inside the mutiny building, and it's Cam and Tom. They're working, and they're both at Cam's office desk. They're sitting opposite each other on sort of either side of the desk, so they both have space. And it looks like Tom has really carved space for himself into Cam's office, which again, like, when has she ever done this with anybody? She's really made space for him in her zone, in her lair. So we're going to get an overhead shot so we can see them working from above. And Tom says, "I did the debugging on this at the staircase." He's sort of checking some things off of a list for himself. And he looks to her, he says, "And you reconfigured the game menu?" Cam nods. She's like, "Well, yeah, I want to go over it, but I think we're basically there." Tom says, "We are there. We did it. It's done. It's perfect." He's happy. She doesn't look like a person who feels like it's done. Cam says, "Well, I want to tweak a few more things and copy protect it and maybe rewrite some of the scroll at the top." And now Tom's confused. She sort of rattled off that whole list of things to do, but right smack in the middle of it, sandwiched between other sort of non-threatening things, was the thing that threatened him. So he says, "Well, copy protect it, but we don't do that. We're mutiny." Cam says, "Well, we both wrote some pretty bitchin' code. You want someone to take that?" Tom says, "I learned to code by copying other people's work, pulling it apart. So did you." Cam says, "I've also had my work stolen. It's not pretty." Tom says, "Well, we would never have met if you had copy protected Parallax." Cam says, "But we did meet. So because we met, I can copy protect our work without fear of us not meeting." Which is a cute way to spin that, but doesn't really sit well with Tom. So she's going to stretch her whole body across the desk so that she can get her face up closer to Tom's. Her eyes are just so big in this profile shot. What a face she has. She says, "We wrote this amazing game and I don't want anyone taking it from us." And all of this is very we and us, in a time when she's also being very I about the company, she's being very we and us about extract and defend. So I think, it really does actually suggest how much she's letting Tom in and trusting Tom, that she's still preserving that for this. But for him, like, does it really, he kind of nods a little bit. He doesn't look satisfied with this. They're going to kiss. And from another room, we're going to hear Boz interrupt all of this. He's like, "Cam, you coming or what?" She's going to sort of look up from the kiss. Before we move on from this scene to see what Boz wanted to talk about, I am once again reminded of my hot take that Tom is just Cam a season ago at like a lot of different stages. And here I think it's playing out again in this episode. I think I'll be able to point to that a lot of different ways in this episode. But this idea of copy protecting and Kim saying, I've been there. I've had my work stolen. First of all, she is trying to prevent a slingshot to giant relationship, which she directly experienced almost exactly a season ago. And Tom hasn't had that experience before. Yes, they've both learned to do what they did by copying other people's work, by stealing, by sort of sharing things with the masses. But Kim has had the experience of, they built that she was part of building the giant. The slingshot came around and they copied the whole machine. And in order to resolve that, all of these dramatic things happened where her operating system was basically removed from the machine, and it was, something much more vanilla was put in her eyes. And so like she's had that experience, and not for nothing, she's also had the experience of Tom copying Parallax earlier this season. She's been on the receiving end of this. Tom has not yet experienced being on the receiving end of this. But give him a minute. Give him maybe 30 minutes, and he will be on the receiving end of experiencing what it is like when somebody steals all the stuff your company worked for, except, of course, the games and the game he just built. But he is going to be part of trying to figure out, like, we don't have a company anymore because our idea was stolen. So in just a matter of 30 minutes of this episode, Tom will have more direct experience that relates with Cam here, which is why Cam has evolved into somebody who would say, I want this copy protected. Okay, so let's go from there to Boz in the kitchen. He's got a legal pad full of notes. There's a manager's meeting here. We've got Donna and Cam and Boz is leading it. He's like, okay, everything's squared away. Keg's been delivered. Tables are here. The nitwits are setting up the PA out back. Donna is so excited. This is a really big day for Donna. Donna is ear to ear smiling for the majority of this episode. This is her day. Cam kind of knows that. Cam is nervous. She's got arms crossed. She's fidgeting. She's very removed from everybody. And is that because this is Donna's day and Cam doesn't want to acknowledge the work that Donna did that's actually overtaking the games? Or is it because Cam's just weird with everybody right now because she said, this is my company, none of you get a say, and I'm not selling it? I think it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that with them right now. People are setting things up around them in this conversation. Donna's like, well, you bringing anybody, Boz? Boz says, well, maybe, we'll see. Donna is still beaming. She's like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. Cam does not look like this is going to be so much fun. She says, it's going to be like 100 awkward first dates at once. Who are these people? We don't even know. And Donna says, well, it's a nice way to say thank you for sticking with us through all the ups and downs. They're kind of coming off of an interesting moment here because the only one of them that's met somebody that they know from Mutiny in the real world was Lev, and that did not work out well for Lev, and that is very recent. But at the same time, I can imagine how exciting this must have been at that time to have like those early communities that were built on the internet and those early places where you could chat with people, and to actually be in a situation where you could collect all of those people in one place and know that they all valued the same thing. I think now, yes, that type of thing happens a lot, but it's probably less special because there were fewer places to assemble then than there are now. So having said all of this, Donna says it's going to be a nice way to thank them. Boz says, that brings us to our next topic. He drops the legal pad. He's like, we're doing great. Community's raking it in. We've got more and more users staying on for longer. He's going to high five Donna because Donna's having a great day. Cam's like, in games? Boz says, well, they're not growing as fast, but those users are loyal. Those boys ain't going anywhere. And it was a really nice touch on how he tried to be diplomatic in that situation. But we understand the problem here. And one of the reasons why Cam is going to hide out for as much of the party as she can. Cam was going to nod here. She knows what all that means. She's not particularly pleased about it. She says, can we afford to switch networks yet? Boss says, not quite, almost, just a few weeks, like the last couple. We'll get there. And they all nod, and that's it. They end the meeting. Donna and Cam cross each other and leave the room in separate directions because that is the kind of day they're having right now. Boz is like, it's just not all as cohesive in the mutiny environment right now. We are going to go to Gordon's garage, and Ed's in there like, wow, 15 more orders today. Larry is working on unboxing a computer, and we're going to hear a bell ring, and Larry's like, well, how many is that? And was it a bell or a phone? I wrote bell, but hey, whatever. You can see my confusion with my own notes there. That's fine. Larry says, how many is that? Gordon says, 250 last I counted. That's a lot of orders for this small team. So Gordon's like, yeah, I took out a bunch of ads, the high-end magazines, and, told those dillweeds they want to stick around. So now, and we'll get this confirmed in Larry's next line. How are we supposed to keep up with that with only two of us left? It's only Larry, Ed, and Gordon still there. And the other couple guys who had been part of their meetings they bailed. They probably bailed after Gordon's motivational speech went really wrong in the previous episode. Gordon says, well, we'll hire more people. We can afford some young talent. Larry is looking at paperwork from inside the box. He's like, Gordon says, what's that? Larry says, it's a return. The serial port wasn't installed correctly. Gordon says, no way. Come on, guys. Who did this one? Larry's going to point to Gordon's signature on the side of the box. Gordon probably packed that one himself. So Ed comes in. Oh, it's the doorbell that rang before. Ed comes in and he says, look who I found. And he's got Stan in tow. It's been a minute since we've seen Stan. Stan, it's a reunion. So Stan comes in, he greets everybody. He's back in town for a bit, thought he'd stop by, see how you guys are doing. Gordon's like, yeah, how's everything going out west? What are you working on? Stan gives the kind of answer you give when you're not working on anything. He says, oh, this and that. A few things just sort of germinating. Nothing in particular that he wants to share. Larry isn't very impressed with that. Larry did not interpret that the same way I interpreted that, which is, I've got nothing going on. Larry's like, ooh, got things germinating. So Stan's like, well, it's great. There's more VC money floating around than anyone knows what to do with. How's it going here? Gordon says, great, going really great. Actually, it's too great. So unless you want to pick up a screwdriver and pitch in, he starts moving to pick up and move the box, which is sort of between all of them in this conversation, but also is a symbol of his mistake. He just lifts that up, moves it over. He's like, yeah, so unless you want to help, we got to get to work. Stan says, all right, well, I'm going to head over to the landing later if you guys want to meet up for lunch, which Ed and Larry are really interested to do. Gordon is busy. So they agree. He does not. They all get back to work. So we're going to go back to Joe entering Jacob's office, and Jacob and another guy are there. And I guess it's been a couple weeks now. Guess we've jumped a bit in time. It's always something that I have to wrap my head around in TV series when one storyline is all happening in one day. And this Joe and Sarah storyline, I'm guessing this all just happened across 2 weeks. But that is what we sit with here. So Jacob is with another guy in his office, and Jacob introduces Joe. He says, here he is, Joe, this is Jesse Evans. Joe says, welcome, great to meet you. This is the new hire. Jesse says, you too, man. Really excited to be here. Jacob is all smiles because his plan is in motion. He says to Joe, how was the trip? Joe's like, wonderful, thank you. He turns to Jesse, went on a honeymoon out west, scouting it out. Jesse's gonna nod. Jacob gives him the backstory. He says, Joe was absconding with my daughter to California. Joe says, yep, starting my own thing. Talked to a few VC firms. Jesse says, that's fantastic. I'm just coming from there. Joe doesn't really like this. Do you know Mark Merlis? Says Jesse. Joe's like, yeah, going back to my IBM days. Just this great guy to talk to, knows everybody. No, Jesse's not like, I'll introduce you to Mark Merlis. He's like, do you already know Mark Merlis? Joe says, yeah, he put me in touch with Bob Reed and Stuart Woods. Jesse engages, amazing. They're in my pickup basketball game. Once again, these are not people that Jesse was planning to introduce Joe to. Even though he already knows them that well. Jesse says, you'll have to sub in for me now that I'm here. Jacob is smiling watching all of this. It's such like a stick it to Joe sort of thing. It's such a specific hire. It's like little Joe, like young Joe. And I think that's something Joe is reading in this whole situation. So Jesse says, do you know Jeff Archer? I'll get you his info. Oh, an introduction he is willing to make. That's lovely. He says he's a great guy, super smart. He nods to Joe and to Jacob. He's just trying to balance all this. Joe says, well, what are you doing? What were you doing out there? Jesse's like, well, I started an online service, Simnet. Did pretty well. He humble brags. Eventually got bought out by Oracle, turned that money into a few different ventures, one out west, one in Tokyo. You know how this business is, always got to be moving in every direction. And he's got that, who, me? Face. He's young Joe. I mean, Joe's connections with Tokyo, this guy built a business out in Tokyo. He's an idea guy, working in an online space, creating big things. And I think Joe looks at all of this. And first of all, I don't think that he thought his background would be the background of the person who's needed for the role he thought needed to be filled. So right away, there's that question. But also, this guy is like, oh yeah, the thing that you're trying to do now, because this is like your big idea and you're trying to innovate and be amazing. I've been there, literally done that and talked to all the people. It's like, oh, it sort of takes the shine off of the newness of the Joe's ideas of what he's about to go pursue. And what is this guy doing here? So Jesse says, really love what you got going on here, though. Let me just spin that back around. It's a fantastic opportunity you spotted. Joe says, thank you. A good friend of mine did the hardware work, Gordon Clark. He's coming by later to walk you through it. Jesse's like, right. Great. I could use all the help I can get in that department because Jesse clearly does not have the technical hardware knowledge. Jacob says, Jesse's more of a big picture guy. Jesse nods, and Joe's stunned at all this. He's like, so what is that big picture that you're seeing here? Jesse and Jacob look at each other. Jesse says, well, it's like what can you tell Joe in this situation? So Jesse says, in Q1, we'll be in 4 different cities, Dallas, New York, San Francisco, London. Then by Q4, we can maybe be in 24 cities. As he's talking, so there's some great choices here, very specific choices. Jesse's voice starts to get echoey and further away. And a simple note, we're hearing a simple musical note in the background. Paul, I should have looked up the pronunciation of his name here. Hasslinger, the composer for this show. Normally, he's done work throughout the show, right? But most of the time, it's there in the background, and I'm not noticing it as much. And in this episode, I noticed it in a really good way. I think probably if you're Paul, you maybe don't want your work to be so noticed. You want it to feel natural in a scene. But this episode had some really specific choices, and I did notice it here in all of the best ways. So in this scene, we're hearing just starting with a very eerie one musical note choice that's sort of humming in the background as Jesse's talking. And you're going to hear Jesse continue to speak as his voice gets further and further away. He's saying, positioned around the globe as we are, a company this size, we could arrive on the scene a major player right away. None of the uncertainty of a fledgling outfit. Joe kind of nods up, like, whoa, you have a big idea and it's nothing like where I thought you were going with this. And then Jesse's saying, we're in a position to seize the market. We're at the point where we can see him talking, but we can't hear what he's saying anymore because it's just that music, like the note, the eerie note that's getting louder. The music takes over. It's something you would feel like you would see this for Gordon. And we did actually in the last episode, we saw things kind of fading into the distance for Gordon. And Joe is also really off balance here. So he's going to look down and this scene ends, but we're certainly going to get more with these people. First, let's go to the Clark household. The phone rings. Gordon's going to answer it, just static. Can't get on anybody on the other side of the line. We're going to hear a knock on the door and Ed and Larry come in together after lunch because it's still just one day there. Gordon says, hey, what's up? And Larry looks very serious. So Gordon's like, so how was lunch? And Larry says, good, we brought you a sandwich. Gordon was going to go to the fridge. And Larry's sort of shifting in place here. It's awkward. He's got some news he doesn't want to deliver. You can tell. Larry says, we've been giving it some thought. We think it's not that we don't believe in what you're doing here. It's like, no, it's not that. Larry says, we just need something less risky. Gordon's like, need something less risky? Like, what's the risk? We've got 250 orders waiting to be fulfilled. Just a quick note on this. Look, I haven't done the calculations on earnings and what making this amount of money back at that time would equal today. But if the price point for these computers is about $800, and maybe some people are being upcharged for more customization. So if they have 250 orders and they are going for about $800, we're talking about $200K worth of computers. And that's not taking into account the inventory, the money that has been going out to get the supplies, which they've been spending a lot of money. But again, that's one order, that's one short amount of time worth of orders. So I do wonder how much money this company stands to make. Potentially quite a lot, but you can't scale it with 3 guys assembling the computers. So trying to figure out if this is a good business arrangement or not right now with where they are. So Ed says, sure, we're just a little too old to bet our futures on this. And Gordon's like, okay, I see what's happening here. So Stan takes you out for lunch, fills your head with visions of VC money flowing through the streets. Larry's like, no, that's not it. That's not what's happening here. Gordon says, oh, so these fancy Silicon Valley companies started out somewhere too, It's not in a big corporate office. It's in a garage with 3 guys rolling up their sleeves, betting on themselves. We are in this together. Ed and Larry look uncomfortable. They're not talking. We know that Stan has not tried to convince them of anything. Stan has nothing. He has no irons in the fire right now. But Donna did have that conversation with Larry in the previous episode, and Gordon did have that really significant mental slip and in front of his whole team. And so it's looking like a pretty serious thing that there's 250 orders in hand, but what's the situation with Gordon? They don't feel comfortable to say all that. So Gordon says, well, great, it's fine. You guys are going to be the ones on the outside looking in. Just you wait. He is so angry. He's just been beaten down by everybody in this episode, he thinks. Larry says, yep, I'm sure you're right. Right now, we've made up our minds. The phone is going to ring again. Gordon looks at them angry. He doesn't even want to answer it. I don't know if he even knows there's a phone to be answered here, if he's imagining it or what. So Larry says, you going to answer that? Which is somewhat reassuring that the phone ring that he heard before was actually ringing. Gordon picks up the phone. He says, hello. And Joe's voice says, who's Jules? Gordon's like, what? Joe says, I called a second ago. The connection was bad. Oh, whew. Well, at least that's the thing. But now he has to worry about Stan trying to get the better of him. Who's Jules? Gordon says, nobody. And he's going to look back at Larry and Ed with like he just, every now and then he wants to give a glaring look to those two. But he goes back to this conversation. He says, what do you want? We're going to see now, we're actually going to see Joe and Jesse in the mainframe room. Really cool choices here. So that room is very blue and white. Jesse's all in blue, IBM blue. Joe's all in white. He's going to be in white a lot in this episode. And so they're standing in this mainframe room, and Joe says, you were supposed to be at West Group half an hour ago. Gordon's like, oh yeah, I forgot. I'll be right over there. He hangs up. He's been so busy at work. I believe he was just so lost in work that he just got absorbed. It happens. Ed says, okay, sorry, Gordon. I'm sure you'll do fine without us. Gordon says, you guys are a couple cowards. He's like, psh. And then he leaves. He actually walks through them to leave. He like parts to get out the door. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the mutiny house, because what's happening there? Well, Archie is running up the stairs, and as he's walking past, we're going to see somebody putting a cassette tape into a tape player. It's the Mutiny Picnic Mix. And Archie shouts into the house, first users are showing up. And Archie runs back out. Donna and Carl run out. Everybody's got a smile on their face. They go downstairs. Donna greets a woman who's checking in. She says, I'm Donna Clark. You can help yourself to some food, and there's beers in the hot tub. A guy named Moonchaser. He's got a name tag that says Moonchaser on it. It says, you're Donna Clark? I pictured you as really fat. That was a fun way to articulate what so often happens, where you and it happens with podcasts too now, right? Like I think a lot of times with audio podcasts, if you haven't seen somebody's face, like you have this image in your head of who you're talking to or who's talking to you. So Donna's like, thank you. What do you say? She's going to walk away to greet more people. That's what she's going to do. Cam, she comes out of the house just for a moment. She's going to sort of stand over the balcony, not engaging, just standing there watching all of this. They have her dressed in a black tank. It's like a crop top, and everybody else is wearing bright colors who's outside right now. So that's the storm cloud mood that she's in right now. But then Tom comes out of the house and meets up with her. He's also at the balcony level, and he is in cosplay. Cosplay for what? I don't know. A game, one of their games. Is it Parallax? Is it Extract and Defend? So he's like, where's your costume? I thought we were going in character as Spy and Sentry. And she says, yeah, I mean, we talked about it, but I didn't. And he says, oh, seriously? Now I look weird. Are you coming? So their communication is really off right now. Again, he kind of wanted her to sell the company. He didn't say that. He let her make her choice, but he was leaning in that direction. He would have preferred that she sell the company, and then she decided not to. And we're going to find out later that he knows that it's because Joe said something. And now, he's dressing up and she's not. And it's just weird. So he's like, are you coming? She says, yeah, I'm gonna finish up some work, and then I'll be down in a minute. Tom's like, okay, because he knows the things that were on her list. Cam says, but you look good though. He's like, yeah, thanks. And he walks down the stairs. We're going to go back to the garage. Camera's tilted a bit here. Actually, it's not the garage of Gordon. It's a garage of many cars. And Gordon is there with Joe. Gordon, I guess, he's supposed to be helping Joe to transfer knowledge to the new hire. But Gordon's just in his van. He's not getting out of his van. Joe's standing next to the van. Gordon says to Joe, well, it's all standard except for the custom cabinets. And he just gives a bunch of technical information. He just hands a whole sheet of paper over to Joe. Actually, an entire manual. And he says, it's all here in this manual. but I'm here if need be. And this would be great. This would be enough information if Jesse were a hardware guy, but he is not. So if this is not enough information for Joe, it's not going to be enough information for Jesse either. Jesse's going to have to find somebody who can clarify all of this. Joe says, back it up a second. I need you to walk him through what we've done. Gordon says, I don't have time for that. Give him this. Tell him what I told you. He'll understand, which he won't. Joe looks a little concerned. I mean, he's like, yeah, that's fine. He looks a little concerned. He says, okay, is everything all right? Gordon says, yeah, I'm great. How are you? He's forgotten Sarah's name. So Joe interrupts. He says, Sarah. She's great. Gordon's like, good. Joe says, we got married. Pause. I have been waiting to ask this question for a very long time now. When I knew I was going to do this rewatch podcast, I was like, I get to ask people this question. Joe says, we got married. And then he shows Gordon his ring. And the way that he shows Gordon his ring is he does this. Well, he does this. This is the hand with the ring. And then you see the back of the ring right here. And I thought to myself, is that how a guy would show another guy a ring? When you see a woman do it, she goes like this because you want to see the diamond, the size of the diamond, whatever, right? A woman will show her ring like this. She will show it, make sure you can see the prominent part under the ring. Would a guy just do this? Guys, women who've seen guys do this, what do? I've literally never experienced this. And so when Joe holds his hand up like this, is like, is this something that I culturally just did not know? Please, somebody help. Thank you. I have been waiting so long. Please answer. Okay. I don't know. Maybe everybody's laughing at me because I'm such a nerd. I don't know. Okay. So check that question has been asked. Great. We can move on. So Joe says we got married. Gordon's like, what? His eyebrows lift. Joe's gonna laugh. He's like, well, we spent the last couple weeks in California for our honeymoon. Gordon's like, well, no kidding. Congratulations. And they nod at each other. See you later, Joe. And Joe starts walking away. And then he stops and he turns back and he says, I think we're actually moving out there to California. This might be goodbye for a while. And Gordon, okay, that's enough to make him pause for a second. He hangs out of his whole car and he just sort of shakes Joe's hand. He says, well, best of luck. Joe says, you too. We're going to go from there back to the mutiny party. So Carl's given his thoughts on the world to a bunch of people who will listen. He's like, have we landed on the moon? Of course not. You guys have seen Last Starfighter, right? He's talking with Wonder Boy, a couple other guys, and they're kegs in the foreground for all of this. So he's like, yeah, we landed on the moon. No way. You've seen Last Starfighter, right? They can do anything with special effects these days. And who has access to that technology first? Hollywood? Nah, I don't think so. Okay, conspiracy theorist. So now comes one of my favorite aspects of this episode is James being completely like just all of the worst introductions that have ever happened to James in this episode. So James is going to show up in a suit and a smile. He's very excited. And Boz is like, James! He's going to give him an enthusiastic handshake. And that is going to be the only person excited to meet James for the rest of this episode. James is like, so this is mutiny. Boz says, yeah, let me show you around. He's going to walk with James and he encounters the first person that James needs to have a really awkward introduction with. And he's like, Bodie, this is my son, James. And Bodie lifts his sunglasses and he says, weird. And James is like, nice to meet you. Which is a very appropriate, respectful way to acknowledge somebody who just said weird. And you would think Bodie would try to lift his game up a little bit now, but he does not. And he says, Boz has a son. And he's totally neutral, if maybe slightly disappointed. has Boz never mentioned James to anybody at Mutiny? I mean, if you're James in this situation, first, that was weird. Second, did you not know that Boz had a son? Does this guy not talk about me at all? Um, okay, so there's that, and Boz is like, come on, and he keeps leading James. We need to find somebody else to introduce James to. He says, I tell you, James, it might not look like much, but these kids are brilliant. You wouldn't believe. And James is looking a little more serious because that was kind of an insulting introduction that just happened there. But they're kids. So we're going to go from here to Tom and Cam. Tom is going to go into Cam's office, and Cam is working there with her headphones on. She is the person still at work. And Tom's like, hey, Cam's going to take off her headphones. She says, hey. He says, so what are you doing? Why aren't you outside? She says, I'm just finishing up the game. I'll be out in a minute. I mean, he kind of is aware they already finished up the game. Tom says, the game is done. Come on, this is your company. Cam's still working. He looks at her, and then he kind of knows what she's working on. And he says, well, I guess it was stupid to think I talked you out of it. Cam says, come on, I'm protecting our work. Tom says, do you have any respect for me? Cam says, I respect this shit out of you. Okay, I guess that's a Cam way to say that. Or does she? Tom says, you don't value my opinion. Never mind. And he just starts to leave. She gets up. She's like, no, Tom, what? Come on. Everyone is pissed at me in this house. No one's saying anything. It's driving me crazy. What is it? Pause for 1 second just to really put a finer point on this. Cam is going behind his back. She mentioned that this was on the list of things to do, but I think he thought that maybe he squashed this conversation, or at least that they would have it again in greater detail, not during the party. But here we are. It's during the party. He's out. He's occupied, not paying attention. And she is copy protecting the work, which feels a little like Gordon taking her operating system out of the Giant during Comdex. And she's doing to Tom what was done to her in a way. And so Tom's now Cam. If Cam felt betrayed by that, maybe Tom would feel a little betrayed by this. But at the very least, he knows that he was advocating for a different outcome, and that without really ever giving his opinion the time of day, she's just doing it. Okay, so she's pushing him now. She's like, everybody in this house, it's awkward. Nobody's saying anything. It's driving me crazy. Tom turns back to her. It looks like he's taking a moment to decide, should I say what I'm thinking or should I not say what I'm thinking? And then he decides, and you can see it all flash across his face. And he says, okay, it pisses me off that I told you I want to sell. And then Joe tells you that you shouldn't, and you listen to him. So he does know. Cam says, they were going to ruin this company. Now, Joe said that outright, but Cam always thought that anyway because of Joe's involvement. Tom says, it's not about the sale, it's about you and me. And I do think that that's true. I think there was a transparency of communication that he was looking for there, but he did want her to sell. Cam says, so now they're just going to shout at each other a bunch. Cam, and they're really, it's getting heated and a lot of energy is here. And she's like, then just break up with me if you're going to break up with me. And we can, Tom's angry. He is confused. He's like, I'm not going to break up with you. I'm just mad at you and I can be mad at you. All right. Cam says, so what? You want to quit? And they're shouting all of this. And Tom says, no, I don't want to quit. I love you. Why would I quit? And that she freezes and he's still really heated. He's like, have you ever had a disagreement before? We're just talking. People talk, they fight, they argue. It happens every day. And he's still yelling, but now it's a little more softly because he sees how frozen she is from that thing that he just said. And Cam, he takes a breath and she exhales loudly. And none of this ever occurred to her. I think, what made her stop? I mean, him saying, I love you, that was a thing. But also, Does she have a ton of experience with people, like with arguing and people not leaving her? Um, she's dealt with some abandonment in her life. So I think, and now she's in a habit of abandoning other people when it gets rough because she wants control in the situation. So I don't know. I think she's walking on eggshells right now with Tom, and then he unloads this. Her eyes go wide. She says, "You love me?" Tom says, "What? No, no, no. You're putting words in my mouth." He's like, "I was angry at you. Let me be angry." Cam says, "No." She comes closer to him. She says, "You said those words." And now for our next awkward introduction with James. Boz knocks on the door because this feels like exactly the time. Because there's no way you could have heard Tom and Cam shouting like this from any other room of the house. Like, of course, if you're Boz, you want to introduce James to them at this moment. So Boz opens the door. They just stop mid-argument and they turn. And yep, it's Boz and James, who they've never met. And Boz is like, "Hey, there she is, the big boss. Cam, this is my son, James." And Tom and Cam are just looking at James. Boz is very proudly showing off his son. James is like, "Hi." Boz is like, and we look at Tom and Cam in the wider shot, and Cam just lifts her eyes from a profile, and Tom just shakes his head a little. And this is the next introduction that James got. It's so good. I mean, if you're James, this is just the worst. It's gotta be so weird for Boz. Okay, so Gordon, we're gonna go back to Gordon in his kitchen. He's opening a beer. We've got a little bit of tilt in the camera. The phone's gonna ring. This time also for real. It's one of his kids on the phone. He says, "Hello, hey, sweetie. How's camp? Yeah? What you make? Rocking horse? All by yourself?" And he starts flipping through Bite magazine. And he says, "Did you paint it purple?" He is flipping through and then he stops because he has seen an ad. Not his ad, an ad from a company called JGL Custom Computers. They're also doing $799 standard model builds for computers. And he's having a conversation with one of his kids and he just says, "Son of a bitch." "No, sorry, sweetheart, not you." "Yeah, that all sounds great. Gotta go. Daddy's gotta go. Call you tomorrow. Bye." And so Gordon tears the ad out of the magazine. He is rattled. This is the paranoia episode, folks. So we're going to go back to the mainframe room. And here, this was a really fun choice. So we're in the mainframe room, but the camera angle on this, it's like kind of up on the ceiling, pointed down on a diagonal. So you can barely see over the top of the different machines. And Joe is tall enough. He's walking. Joe is talking to somebody, but we can't see the other person because all we can see is the top of Joe's head because he is tall enough to be seen over the mainframes. And we can't see the other person yet, but they're walking. And we hear Joe say, "Gordon Clark's got a unique mind." And then we're going to see Jesse come into view because they stand in front of the machines now. And he says, "Well, clearly this is pretty cool." Joe says, "So if you're going to switch over to a more conventional setup, maybe it would be best if I stuck around for a few days, to help." Jesse stops and he's going to turn and he raises his eyebrows and he's hearing Joe say this. Joe's like, "Maybe I can help troubleshoot with you." Jesse says, "Oh, no, that's fine. You've got bigger fish to fry. California's calling, right?" Like Jesse's like, "Get out of here immediately, if not sooner." That's what Jacob said. Joe smiles. He's like, "Yeah," but then he's going to give Jesse some advice that nobody asked for. He says, "You should definitely bring on a hardware specialist. The expansion is going to require a lot of expertise in that area." Jesse says, "I got it from here. It's my problem to worry about." Off with you. Off you go. Like, go to California. Go meet the guys that I play pickup basketball with. See ya. Yeah, that's disturbing. So Joe's gonna nod. Jesse's like, "Thanks for your help." But it's very clipped. and there's no more room for conversation there. Joe leaves and he just sort of rubs one of the machines on the way out. We're going to go back to Mutiny here for a moment. And we're going to see Cam at a computer. She's sitting back because she's hiding. She's hiding in this room. She's hiding from her entire team. She's hiding from Donna. She's hiding from Tom. But then we hear somebody outside shout Lev's name and Yo-Yo's name. And she runs to the window to confirm, oh my God, they're there. She runs out of the house. This finally gets her not just out of the house, but down the stairs into the party. She runs up to Lev, and Lev is all banged up, but he's out of the hospital. She hugs him. She's like, welcome back. Lev says, I wasn't going to miss this. I wanted to see what these freaks were like in person. A thing to say for him, because he just meant what one of those people were like in person, and it didn't work out very well for him. But there's strength in numbers here, and there are other people in this community that and not for nothing, he and Donna were ultimately the first ones to work on Community, so this is very personal for him. Cam is relieved. She says it's really good to see him. And then Lev sees Bodhi and his eyes go wide. Before we've seen Bodhi, he sees Bodhi and his eyes go wide, and Cam gets out of the way. Bodhi runs in and he's like, Lev, you look so fragile. I want to hug you, and then he just goes in for the hug anyway. Lev says, just be careful, Bodhi. So all the guys are standing around Lev, just really happy to see him. And Cam is going to have a quick conversation with Yo-Yo. And Yo-Yo says, I heard the new game was pretty cool. I decided to check it out. Remember that Yo-Yo left that situation because there was just too much risk for him. But, he's part of the team, and he's showing up here at the user party. So, and she's accepting him. She's not holding a grudge. She's letting him back in. So she says, yeah, I think you'll dig the game. Thanks for coming. Yo-Yo nods. And then we hear Donna's voice off screen. She says, Cameron, okay, so we're all here now. I feel like it's a good time to say something. Cam says, yeah, sure, go ahead. Take the mic. Donna says, no, you. And Cam says, no, Donna, I really don't like to do that. Granted, we recently saw her get on top of a table and give a fantastic speech, but she was heated. It was a moment of great fire in her heart. And so that was not as hard as maybe this would be. Donna's going to pull her upstairs anyway. They're going to walk to the top of the balcony. Donna's going to get the DJ to turn off the music. She's going to grab a mic. She introduces Cam. She says, hello, everybody. I'm Donna Clark. If you haven't met me yet, thank you all for coming. Now I'd like to introduce you to the mind behind Mutiny, our leader, Cameron Howe. And I mean, everybody's acknowledged that Cam is a leader. She is the person who could get on a tabletop and give a speech even before she said, this is my company. But she now has said, this is my company. And here's Donna saying she's our leader. Everybody's going to clap. Cam grabs the mic. She doesn't really know what to say. She's like, hi, I'm Cameron. We hear Buzz shout, nice start. Oh, Buzz. Kim has literally no clue what to say here and doesn't say any of the things we should say when she's up there. So she says, oh, we have an announcement to make. Today, we're putting the finishing touches on our latest game. It's called Extract and Defend. We hear Carl go, yeah. And next to him is Tom, who is silent and his arms are crossed. She says, how many gamers do we have here today? And we hear somebody shout yes, a few claps, mostly from Tom, who's clapping at the other people who are gamers. We can see a few in the first shot. We see several people raise their hands, but then when we get the wider shot, we realize those people were standing together and almost nobody else in the crowd is a gamer. They're there for Community. So when you look at it, it's like the majority of the people are there because of Donna's thing, not because of Cam's. So Cam kind of nods knowingly when she sees this, and she says, well, I think you guys are really going to love what we've done. Doesn't say a thing about Community. Doesn't say thank you to everybody. I mean, she missed some important beats. She needs a speechwriter next time for sure. But Tom sees all this, and I think he kind of knows that was a blow for her. And he's not verbally backing her up, but he looks at her with a little bit more of like a protective gaze. And Cam looks back at him. She could probably use him in this moment. So we're going to watch Joe and Sarah packing up their apartment. Joe says, did you talk to your publisher friend? Sarah's like, Jeanette, yeah, I'm going to meet with her for coffee when we're back out there. How was your last day? How's the new guy? Tell me about the new guy. Tell me about Jesse. Joe says, oh, he's great. Like him a lot. Young. Doesn't have the hardware experience I would have expected. Blots his mouth. He says, but this seems nice enough. And he is just walking past Sarah to get something from another room, like a cool breeze, just walking right past her. Sarah looks at him knowingly. She says, so you hate him? Joe says, what? No, not at all. As he's walking away, he says this. Sarah smiles. She's like, well, there's a palpable hate energy here. Joe says, I don't know. He comes back. He's got suitcases in both hands. He says, I can't put my finger on it. He seems like an odd choice for the job. Again, not only for his lack of experience in the area, Joe thought you needed experience with this job, but he seems like he's like me. He's like a young me. Sarah says, you're going to miss it, aren't you? She gives a little sigh. She says, there are going to be other projects way more exciting than trying to take an oil company into the future. Joe says, yeah. Sarah says, come over here. The way they blocked them in this scene, Sarah's standing on a chair, packing up a box on a table. Joe's standing on the floor, but he's about the same height as Sarah, the way they're set up right now. So she tells him to come over there. She holds his shoulders kind of nurturingly, and she says, you're a force of nature. You make the world what you want it to be. It'll happen in California too. And he looks at her with, I don't know if admiration is the word that I want here, but he looks at her like, yeah, I really did need to hear that. It's like a complete gratitude for Sarah being the one who's always willing to say things like this to him and accept him. So he sighs and he hugs her, and I just feel gratitude there. Sarah says, how about this? She's going to get off the chair. She's walking over to another box. She says, how about we step out of reality for a night? A hard reboot. I think once you're outside, she starts fishing through the box. You'll realize what's really important. And she puts something back behind her, like behind her back, and she spins just to face him. And he says, yeah, how do I get on the outside? And she reveals what she was hiding. She says, I found something when I was cleaning out the closet. She holds up a bag of MDMA, aka ecstasy. Joe says, what's that? She says, well, it's MDMA from when I was doing that expose. He leans back and he kind of folds his arms, but he kind of has that, yeah, I'm into this look. And she says, let's go out tonight. Let's go to the Start Club. We can bid Dallas a fond farewell and show them what they'll be missing. You remember college, Sarah? She's going to take one. And then Joe says, yeah, I couldn't keep up with her. And he walks towards her. She puts one in his mouth. She says, well, you better do your best. Okay, so we're going to go from there to the mutiny party. It's getting a little bit darker outside, and there's dancing is full force right now at this party. Gordon walks through the crowd. Donna says, hey, you made it. She's saying that from the balcony. She comes down to meet him. She says, there's some people here you really have to meet. Like this one guy, he proposed to his girlfriend after they met on Community. How cool is that? She's wearing her name tag. It says D. Clark Admin. Which is fun because they're all just introducing themselves with their usernames. Gordon says, oh, that's great, honey. And he says, oh, look, he brought the torn out ad, and he says, look at this ad. She says, what's this? He says, somebody stole my idea, and he is pained. Donna says, no, your idea is about you. It's about Gordon Clark, computers, handmade by an expert. Who knows who these guys are? Pause for a moment in this. I mean, I think there's a lot of patience here from Donna. This is one of her best days, maybe one of her best days ever, and Gordon comes in and is just raining on her parade. And, granted, he has this health condition and she knows that, and that's very top of mind for her. And here she is having to deal with this on a really special day for her. And it's just Gordon coming in, chirping his paranoia at her. So Gordon says, look, the price point's the same. The slogan's almost the same. Donna's like, go get a beer. Let's just enjoy this party. Please stop. Gordon says, no, I think it was Stan. Donna's like, Stan? She doesn't even know Stan's back. Gordon says, yeah, I think he got Ed and Larry involved. Should I go over there? Ugh. Donna says, no. Gordon's like, should I say something? Donna's like, I don't think so. And this is a really kind choice what she makes here. Because again, she could be thinking, stop like ruining my day. But she is very, she takes care of Gordon in this situation. She says, look, we can, and then she pauses for a second because she finds a word choice that makes this feel more important for Gordon. She says, we should take a look at this tomorrow. It's probably just a coincidence. And even if it's not, there's nothing they can do to hurt Clark Computers. She grabs his shoulders too. That's a move more than one person is making in this episode, as sort of like a no, like, let me ground you. She says, because they don't have the most valuable asset, right? Gordon looks disturbed. Nothing that she can say to him is going to make him feel less paranoid here. So Donna smiles. She says, come on, let's hang out a bit. But she becomes a bit disturbed that she can't pull him out of this funk. And Gordon says, no. He looks at the ad very serious. He says, I think I'm going to go home. I'm feeling a little fried. Donna says, yeah, okay. Go get some sleep then. Gordon leaves. Gordon is not going to go get some sleep, unfortunately. Donna, as Gordon leaves, Donna looks up. She sees Tugboat and a friend of his are dancing. Remember Sam? That's Sam's dance. And they're dancing on the balcony, and Lev is walking around on crutches. Yo-Yo's following him around, which actually, practically speaking, if you're at a party and you're trying to move and you're on crutches, you can't really be holding a drink at the same time. So it's handy for him that Yo-Yo's there as his buddy. He's walking around and smiling. The other thing I want to point out about the fact that Cam ran out of the house when she saw Lev and Yo-Yo is that Lev is the only person on the team who doesn't know what just happened with her not selling the company and the whole voting process and all, because Lev was dealing with his own really traumatic situation at that time, and he was being put in the hospital, and then he was in the hospital when all of this stuff happened. So maybe he hasn't been caught up on all that. Maybe he was caught up by somebody, but it's like the one person that's sort of still a safe zone for Cam. And Yo-Yo too, because he wouldn't know either. So they're walking around, and then we're going to see people are dancing. We've got Dave dancing with a cigarette. We've got people playing with the beach ball. We've got people making s'mores on an open fire. Cam's walking through it all, and a girl stops her. And this scene feels really special to me. This girl is standing there letting Cam get closer and closer to her. And then Cam stops right in front of her. She says, Cameron, how? Sorry, you don't know me. My name is Gretchen. This is your company, right? Gretchen, her hair, she kind of looks, she feels like a person that came straight out of Cam's punk era, like all those friends that she had. This girl, Gretchen, feels like she'd fit right in with them. She's got, I don't know what to call that hairstyle, but I'm sure some of you do. She's got a bit of a punk look. She looks visually, she looks like a young Cam. And she approaches Cam and she says, my name's Gretchen. This is your company, right? And Cam gets to take ownership because this girl's saying it, revering her. She's the only person who's feeling that way about that statement. Cam says, yeah, it is. She owns it and doesn't feel bad about it here. The girl says, I want to say thank you. My family is kind of screwed up, really screwed up. I didn't have anyone to talk to about it until I found Mutiny. There are a bunch of people dealing with the same sort of stuff, and they helped me. They helped me realize that I could walk away. And she starts to tear up. She says, but there wasn't anything wrong with me. And I couldn't have done that without you. Cam doesn't know what to say. This girl says, I'm sorry if that sounds weird. And Cam says, no. And the girl comes in for a big hug. She just hugs Cam and she cries a little bit. And Cam, who is holding a marshmallow on a stick in one hand and a beer in the other, and she's trying to like sort of hug the girl back without her hands. And she's like, no, it's not at all weird. And what a moment that is. This young girl who looks a little Cam-esque, who's got like that similar Cam punk vibe, and who has all this family trauma and drama, and mutiny was her saving grace. And Cam, we know that her father passed away. Where's her mom? You know, like, I don't really much, I have the sense that Cam's been alone for a long time in her life and doesn't, you know, her parents are like not even really mentioned. Her mom is not even mentioned. We've heard mention or seen, you know, Gordon's parents were referred to, and we've met Joe's dad. We've heard about his mom. We've seen Donna's mom and dad. But it just feels like this girl coming up and saying like, your community gave me a means of stepping away and feeling okay about it. And this is all because of you. Cam hasn't even been able, because she has sort of ignored community for so long, she hasn't even been able to get the strength from her community the way this girl, who's like a young version of her, has. And so this girl is thanking her for this company she built that's made such a difference in her life. And I think that would be special regardless for Cam to hear that. But for it to be this particular person saying these particular things feels especially meaningful. I think Cam really takes that in here. So now we're going to go to the club, and we're going to get this room just washed in like a bluish purplish light. And we're going to see another sort of ceiling pointed down at an angle shot. We're going to watch Sarah and Joe enter this room. White confetti is coming down. Sarah and Joe are all dressed in white, and they're dancing, and we're hearing the song Why by Bronski Beat, which is a really fun song that they're playing here. We're going to see a bunch of crowd shots. They're all dancing. Joe holds out more MDMA. He's going to take another. She's going to take another. And he's like, try and keep up. And then I really liked this editing choice. The song is like, tell me why. And then we're going to cut into the next scene, but the music's still playing. Tell me why. And it's just like wailing into the night as Gordon's van drives up to a house in the darkness. Tell me why, Gordon. What a great cut. I think it was called a post slap. I think Rob Komatsu said that. So, okay, Gordon gets out of the van. He's got a flashlight. He looks into somebody's garage. He breaks the window of the garage. He is up to no good. Tell me why, Gordon. Okay. We're gonna find out in a minute, but we're gonna go from here to the mutiny party. Now it's nighttime. Boz and James are rocking. Who knows how many terrible introductions they've had at this point. Boz says, how's the bride? You gonna pop out a couple of pups? Practically speaking, I don't know that you'd get this far into the day without Boz having had this conversation with James already, but you know, it's a TV show. We have to have scenes happening over different moments. And so James says, well, we'll see. We've got time. Boz is like, I'm sure it would make your mom happy. James laughs. It's like, well, that's a terrible reason to have children. Boz laughs. Says, well, James, thank you for coming. And James says, okay, so listen, I know about this job opening. It's like it's an account manager position. I know you left Cardiff as a VP, but it's a solid company. I know the people. I could put in a good word for you. He gives Boz a business card. He says, I can get you out of here. Like, James can rescue Boz from mutiny. And frankly, from what James has seen of mutiny today, maybe Boz needs rescuing from mutiny. But Boz is like, well, thank you, James. And it's not really like, oh, yeah, let's make that introduction. It's just thank you. And James says, okay, all right, good night. And he leaves. What else is happening at this party, you ask? Well, we need to get a continuation of this Tom and Cam argument. So Tom is on the balcony. He's packing some things up. And Cam comes over and she says, you've been avoiding me. Tom says, I haven't. Cam says, yes, you have. It's maybe we could say they were avoiding each other. So he's still staying busy. And she's like, yeah, you've been avoiding me ever since you said, and then very much under her breath, she's like, you love me. He's staying busy because he's just not sure he's ready to engage on this. But then he turns and he says, yeah, fine. I love you. In fact, I would say I love you is a dramatic understatement. I think you're incredible in pretty much every way. She can't even look at him. And he can see this. He says, if that's going to be a problem for you, then I don't know what to say because, and she puts her head down, and so does he, but he's like trying to meet her gaze. And he says, if that's going to be a problem for you, I don't know what to say because it is what it is. And it's not going to change. Even when you're being a total pain in the ass, like you've been this entire day. And she, as he's saying that last thing, she starts to smile. She's like, okay, I'm all right. That's how you get me. And so she leans back and she looks at him and she's like, okay. And she smiles. And he smiles in a sort of teasing way, but actually, this is still a very awkward moment. And he's like, just say the words, okay? It's going to be so much weirder if you don't say the words. She leans her forehead into his chest. The amount of physical touch she does in this scene to avoid saying, I love you is really something. The choices these two actors made were so good. So she leans her whole forehead into his chest and he's like, hey, and he pulls her head up because you're not getting out of this. Like, say, I love you. He pulls her head up and she closes her eyes so she can't see him. And then he's like, look at me. And she opens her eyes. She's being such a child here. He says, say the words. She goes to sort of kiss him to distract him, and he's like not falling for that. So he keeps holding her face and he sort of pulls his away and he says, no. And they smile at each other. And he says, just say the words, just say them. He gives in because she's not saying them, and he gives her a kiss anyway. He says, you're terrible. She hugs him, but it's like she's resting her whole body against him. It's like the hug that girl Gretchen gave to her, and Cam was just sort of like, okay. It's sort of the same thing here. But Tom, he's gonna wrap his arms around her and he says, I take it back, I take it all back. And he embraces her tenderly. She's just fully leaning on him. And what's really interesting to me about this shot is that Tom is not in the frame. She's on the side, like here. He's over here. And we only know he's there because she's being hugged by somebody whose arms are wrapped around her, but we can't see Tom. That feels like a really symbolic choice to me here. This scene, look, she's not being particularly mature about this. There's sort of, it became this game of like him being like, tell me you love me. And she being like, I can't see you. I can't, oh, like, it's a little bit of a game. And he's meeting her with a very serious adult, I love you energy. And she's meeting him with like a nothing. And like a playfulness that the situation doesn't deserve. On the other hand, if she doesn't want to say I love you, she shouldn't say I love you. So he is asking for something that she can't give. And this should be a red flag for Tom, right? And I think it is a red flag for Tom. Um, and goodness, um, it's it's a playful scene, but is kind of a dark scene when you really think about it. And I keep thinking about Tom being Cam a season ago when, it was a season ago, a little bit longer, when Cam was like, Joe, are you still lying to me and telling me wrong stories about where your scars came from on your chest? Like, what? Stop lying to me. Be real, be authentic. People want authenticity. And she was the one pushing Joe to be real with her. And Joe kept being playfully dishonest to avoid it. And that was a problem for them that they had to work through. And Cam's also withholding here with Tom, you know? And it's weird because here Cam's his boss. Cam is now officially the leader of this company, acknowledged as such by just about everybody. And it's this relationship that he's very invested in and she's withholding. So what do you do with that? Okay. So let's go back to Gordon, because what mayhem has he been getting up to? Well, he is currently poking around in a garage quietly with his flashlight, just kind of beaming around the garage. He's looking at the different things in there. Again, the composed music is ominous. It's just really ominous. And then the lights are going to turn on. And we hear Stan say, Jesus, Gordon, what the hell are you doing here? Gordon says, I know you stole my idea. JGL Computers, does that sound familiar? You had the guys sabotage me, the serial ports, putting my name on the back of it just to make Clark Computers look like a joke. We know Stan has nothing to do with this. Stan is ultra confused. He's holding a baseball bat. Somebody broke into his garage. He thought he had to beat down an intruder. He says, I have no idea what you're talking about. Gordon shouts. Shouts. Why else would you come back from California? You can use some of that VC money to get it started, you son of a bitch. The vitriol. Stan has done nothing. And if you're Stan, and if you've heard Larry and Ed talk about the speech that Gordon gave recently, and if they're worried, and if they've heard Donna say to them, like, watch out for Gordon, Stan's now getting his own story to bring to the table. Stan says, I came back because I was tired of being laughed out of the room by a bunch of 25-year-olds I washed out. Sort of similar to what's happening for Joe right now, actually. And Gordon says, well, then what the hell are these? And he points to a bunch of things that are covered up by a sheet, things he hasn't seen yet. But it was his confirmation. Stan says, I'm trying to make ends meet. I'm doing repairs. I've been driving around all day picking up these busted machines. Gordon lifts the sheets. Yep, that checks out. So Stan says, Gordon, can I ask, are you doing coke again? Gordon's like, what? No, of course not. Why would you even think that? Stan says, well, this is Exhibit A. You're poking around in my garage in the middle of the night, accusing me of stealing from you. And Donna told the guys to keep an eye on you and according to them, you've been acting a little nuts. And Gordon, when he hears this, he just looks at him surprised. He's like, Donna told you what? He's so angry. So now he can direct all of the anger he was just feeling towards Stan to Donna. And Stan says, well, she said you were acting strange, or, like, just to let them know, or like if the job was taking a toll on you, she just wanted them to tell you. She's worried about you. Gordon, he starts walking away from Stan. He's very disturbed. And he's like, Donna? Unbelievable. You think she's trying to shut me down? It's the same thing all over again. Ooh. So he is now taking this all the way back to the symphonic, where like Donna told her parents not to give Gordon any more money for this. So now it feels like that to him again. It's just, he's just so paranoid. Um, he's so angry at Donna. And Sam's like, no, 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 you got it all wrong. And so now we're going to see, as he's saying this, we see the lights of a police car flashing. He's like, she was just looking out for you. And he presses the button to lift the garage door so the police can come in. Gordon says, you called the cops on me? Why would you call the cops on me? Stan says, because I heard somebody breaking into my house. He's still holding a baseball bat. Gordon says, Stan, what were you thinking? Why would you do that? What the hell? And the cops come in and they're sort of wrangling Gordon to the ground. And he tells the cops, like, talk to my friend, ask him why he called the cops on me. I swear to God, he's so out of control. The cops bring him all the way down to the ground just to get him to stop squirming. I mean, it's just so upsetting what is happening to Gordon here. This is not a good episode for Gordon. I mean, Scoot McNairy was amazing, but for Gordon, this is a really hard episode. And again, it's just too quick an escalation for me. I think this would be a much more gradual progression for this just to be the illness. So the emotions that he's feeling around all this, it's just this really unfortunate soup of stuff that he's trying to wade through. You don't wade through soup, but you know, I'm mixing metaphors. You get the idea. Okay, Joe and Sarah, we're going to go back to them. Joe physically picks up Sarah. He walks her into another room in the club and he puts her down on a white couch. The visuals here are so cool because it's like they're all dressed in white. There's this white couch. There's sort of white drapery, pipe and drape all over the place. And then there's this like blue and purple lighting that's coloring the whole room. And so Sarah says, you're amazing. They're both they're just on MDMA right now. Joe's like, Joe is so high. He's like, I feel like there's a lot of goodness in me, but I can't get it out of me. I can't give it to the world. I have ideas. I make things in my mind, but I can't get them out into the world. I can't get past this. He's beating at his heart. It's like I'm trapped. The world won't see me, the real me. Sarah climbs on top of him. She says, no, I see you. You're a force of nature. You're going to change the world. This force of nature line is, I guess, a theme that she says to him. She says, you're going to change the world. We see them from overhead. She's sitting on top of him with her arms on her hands on his chest, and he just lays back over sort of the edge of the sofa because he's so tall he can do that. If you're me, that's not a thing you can do because I'm short, but it's fun to see what happens when you're tall. This is a place he can sit that he's not too big for. Okay, so Joe says, I have ideas. Online could be more. She smiles at him. It's like, it could be more than just inside bullshit for anointed coder shitheads. I've never heard Joe talk like this. He says, it could be universal. You could live your life there. You could do everything. I promise you. The world we live in now is going to look like the Stone Age. Look, all these people, we see all these people dancing with their things. The physical world is dead. The pathway is being built into a world of pure information and shared consciousness. The future is bearing down on us like a freight train. He pulls her in close, and nobody sees it. He's being all whispery, like he's seducing her. And we see them in profile, and then they kiss. This all seems like a seduction, except it was about it was about online. It was about I don't know what you call this. I'm not an expert, but he was basically talking about like everybody is connected. So yeah, the internet is what he's speaking. He doesn't have a word for that. Why is she so turned on? I don't know. Anyway, you know, that's lovely, honey. You're a force of nature. Go be a force of nature. So they kiss. He sort of puts her on this side and they keep kissing. But then she sees there's another woman right next to her and a guy. There's a couple right next to them. So she's like, oh, cool. So she kisses the woman and the woman kisses Joe. And then Sarah and the woman kiss again. And then Joe kisses the guy. Uh, okay. And then Sarah turns back to Joe. She says, is this a good goodbye? You ready to get the hell out of Dallas? Okay, so here's a really interesting detail. And this is something that Daisy von Schurler-Meyer referenced in her interview. So Joe is going to, so he's still kind of like, Sarah's kind of draped on him, but he is going to reach over and he's going to grab a red handkerchief. The guy he just kissed is now turned back to the woman he came with. And he's leaning over, so his back is exposed to Joe. And Joe sees a red handkerchief in this guy's back left pocket. And he pulls it out and he wipes his own forehead with it. Turns out, and I didn't have a lot of this information, but I got a clue on this from Daisy. There's all this code around different colors and placements of handkerchiefs in the LGBTQ community. And I did a little bit of research on this, and I'm definitely not an expert. So if I'm getting this wrong, please correct me. My understanding from the research that I'm doing is that a red handkerchief in somebody's back left pocket means they want to fist somebody. And receiving it means you want to be fisted. You're a bottom and you want to be fisted. And isn't that a metaphor for what's about to happen for Joe? Okay. Seems like an excellent reference to make here if I just got that right. If I got that wrong, please correct me. I'm glad to know this exists because who knows what kind of messages I could be giving out. So, all right. So Joe is going to reach over to Sarah. He says, I want to say one last goodbye. The confetti from the ceiling is going to spray down again. He laughs, they leave. We're going to go back to the Mutiny house and we're going to see Cam and Donna sitting alone on the living room couch. It's dark. And it's quiet in the office. And Kim says, I kept telling myself that mutiny was games. We were about games. I think I knew that if I went outside today and saw what you'd done, I wouldn't be able to tell that to myself anymore. And it turns out I was right. I just want this place to be about exploration. And I'm sorry that I stood in your way. What an apology. I hear you, I see you, and I value what you've been doing. Donna says, thank you. Cam says, I'd like to be part of it. Cam says, Donna says, you are part of it. You built this place. Cam says, no, I mean, she sits up. Like on the game side, we're always pushing the code. We're trying to get the most out of it. But what if we applied that same pressure to community? The functionality of it could explode. Donna, she's speaking Donna's language. I mean, now this is a good day for Donna, right? I mean, they had a whole party celebrating the work that Donna did. Most of the people there were to celebrate the work that Donna did. And now you've got Cam who's validating Donna. What a day. Donna says, yeah, so it could run faster. It could be smoother between subjects or finding certain users in conversations. Kim is nodding. She says, yeah, all of that. And then also we could make the interface more of a games interface, except not, we have a world to navigate. It's not a list, but it's a map, She finally, she's kind of gotten lost in all of this, but then she finally looks at Donna, and Donna has like the biggest smile on her face that we've ever seen from Donna. And this moment between Donna and Cam's bringing the energy to it, like what she brought to the Cam-Tom conversation in the closet when they came up with the idea for extract and defend. There's that creation energy that Cam is now getting to experience it with a second person who's like on her level in terms of the idea building anyway. So Cam smiles back at Donna when she sees all this. So now we're going to go back to Joe and Sarah. And they're making out. They're in the mainframe room. He's not wearing pants. Sarah says, this place turns you on. Joe's like, you have no idea. Whoa. So they've snuck into West group. and they're going to do it. Sarah smiles at him and they're kissing, but then they're interrupted. They hear a bunch of people coming in to the office next door to the mainframe room, and the people are like celebrating. They're hooping and hollering, and Sarah and Joe duck down. They don't want to be seen. They're in another room, but there is a window that's shared, so they want to stay hidden. So a bunch of guys run into this office next door, and we can see those guys running in through that shared window. Joe's going to put his pants back on, and Joe says something's going on, and they're all like, for a moment, they're just like teens just sneaking around, trying to hook up where they shouldn't be. Sarah says, no, wait, they can't see us. But if my father hears about this, I'm going to die. So Joe says, no, you go to the limo and I'll meet you there. I'll be stealthy. Sarah sneaks out. Joe sneaks over to the window and sort of stays ducked down, but he's smiling like, oh, I'm going to hear stuff. He's still, this is the cool part of being sneaky right now for him. And that's not going to last very long, because we're going to see that Jesse is leading this group in that other room. It's a team meeting and he's got champagne. They're all clapping. They're celebrating something. It's all a bunch of young mid-20s guys, just like Stan was saying. Jesse says, I just want to come down here to say, job well done, guys. It was a bitch of an assignment, but you stepped up. Seriously. He pops the champagne. He's like, so to WestNet. What's WestNet? Joe is going to look and people part, and what's revealed to him on the computer screen is the WestNet interface that looks exactly like the Mutiny interface, but it says WestNet instead. Joe stands up. His whole heart, you can feel it. He's just sinking. That ominous music continues here. So now we're going to cut back to Donna and Cam having an inspired conversation, and suddenly that whole conversation takes a different tone now that we've seen this little bit with Joe in the middle. They're just spitballing. They're in a state of flow. Donna's like, oh my God, you could walk from topic to topic. Cam says, and no better than that. You could find other users at those places. Donna says, I feel like we have to write this down. Carl, could you clear off the bulletin board? We need to create a layout for community. But then Donna's still excited, but Cam has seen something that makes her feel more serious. And Donna's still spitting out instructions to Carl. She says, I want a list printed of every room. Donna also gets serious. She sees whatever Cam saw. And we see the back of Carl's head, and Carl is frozen. There's like a, oh my God, energy emanating from Carl. Donna says, Carl, what are you looking at? Donna and Cam walk over to Carl. And as they walk closer, we see the camera from their perspective, and it comes over Carl's shoulder, and we see that Carl is looking at WestNet. He says, I don't know what I'm looking at. I logged into Mutiny. Cam sits at a workstation to verify this. Donna says to her, try to log on as an administrator. Cam nods. Beep, beep. Nope, she can't get in. Cam's like, Tom starts walking over. He says, well, he just starts walking over. She says, I'm locked out. Tom says, what's wrong? Carl says, I don't get it. Where's Mutiny? Cam sits back. Her mouth just opens. She's shaking her head. She says, we're kicked off the network. We're replaced by this. Archie and somebody else comes over. People are just starting to sort of invade this space. The ominous music keeps getting louder and louder. And then that's the composed music, just the tonal sounds. It's just, we're going to get a close-up of Cam from a sort of there's a slight tilt in her world, and it's a close-up on the side of her face. She's like, there is no mutiny. It's gone. The guys are coming closer to see. Big development. So now we're going to go from here to the moving car where Sarah is asleep up against the side, up against the door, barefoot in her white dress. And Joe's sitting up, as about as alert as he can be, but he's high. And he says to the driver, change of plans. I'd like to make another stop. So I guess they were supposed to go from here to the airport. And they're not doing that right now because he stops in at the Mutiny House, which is chaos. People are shouting, they're diagnosing. Donna is explaining things to Boz with Tom next to them. She says the phone lines terminate in modem banks at West Group. They switched them over. So now when you dial in the same way you always dialed, you get WestNet instead of Mutiny. They've stolen all of our users. Tom says, and they even cloned our interface. So most people don't even know they're not on Mutiny. They just changed, they'll think we just changed the name. Cam is pacing back and forth. Donna continues. She says, okay, everybody get on community forums. Tell them they're not on Mutiny, which some of the guys start doing. Boz says they cloned the whole thing. Tom says, yes, everything except games. Because remember, community is what Jacob thought was more valuable. He didn't care about the games. Cam says, yes, they realized community was where the money was. Donna says, well, tell them to log off and wait for us to find another network. She wants people to get the users on the phone and tell them to not support WestNet. Boz says, wait for us, Christ. Cam says, why would they pay? Cam's just sitting with this. She's like, why would West Group pay $5 million for us when they can just duplicate us and steal all of our users? Tom's on the phone. And this is just an example. We're getting some snippets of conversations that give us an example of how all of these conversations are going to go. Tom says, hi, this is Tom Rendon from Mutiny. Another company is just taking over our network. And then Lev's going to continue. He says, it's like us, but it's not us. You need to log off. We'll be up again. And he looks over at Donnie. He's like, a week or two? That's a really long time for these guys. Like, it's not realistic that these users will stop using a perfectly functional service for a week or two. Tom finishes his conversation. He says, damn it. And he hangs up the phone. Carl says they don't understand. They're still communicating with all the same users. All of their friends are on WestNet now. Cam cries out, this isn't happening. And she's going to throw a beer bottle as hard as she can at the fireplace, which is where all the movies are stacked up. It's their entertainment system. She hits it and all these movies start toppling to the ground. It's like raining videotapes, which is kind of a cool look. So now Joe and Sarah's car pulls up outside in the dark under the welcome Mutiny user sign. We're just seeing the back of the sign. But here's the detail I love. As they're pulling up, the girl Gretchen, who looked like Cam, is slowly walking away. It's like little girl Cam has left the building. I don't know exactly what I see from that. But I guess that was an interpretation, but I'd really like to know what you think about that, because this is a choice to have, like, clearly to have Joe and Sarah wheeling up at this very moment. They had that girl who played Gretchen walking away at that exact moment. So they made an intentional movement with this. And what do you get from that? So curious to know your thoughts, everybody. But anyway, so we've got Joe getting quietly out of the car. He doesn't want to wake Sarah. She's still sleeping. We go inside the Mutiny House. It is chaos in there. And through the chaos, we hear Joe's voice. Where's Cameron? People start clearing from the doorway. And now Joe is revealed to us. I need to talk to her. We see Donna in the foreground, sort of looking towards the camera. Lev, who's sort of in the middle of the room, turns around and looks at Donna like, oh my God, Joe's here. And Joe's walking further into the house. He's like, where's Cameron? Where's Cameron? Everybody's stopping and looking. Donna stops and turns around and looks at him. I need to talk to her. Something's wrong. And he's sweaty. He's like dripping with sweat. He's dazed. He's high. He can't put together a sentence practically. It's just not the Joe we've seen. He's discombobulated. We're going to see Cameron come out of a room. She's heard him. She walks out of a room. She looks at him. He's saying, "Where's Cameron?" And then he sees her. She comes into his line of vision. Everybody from Mutiny is watching this. Everybody is in the house in this conversation, making it as hard as possible for Joe to get his words out. Nobody is saying anything. They're standing in solidarity. It's very imposing. So, Joe Lee Pace is a very tall actor. He's a statuesque guy, is what I'm gathering here and what I can see on screen. So it would take a lot if you put any of these guys up next to him, he might make them look a lot smaller, right? But them together, sort of puffing up their chests and standing in unison, is just wow. It's an imposition on him. It's hard to break through this wall of guys who are working at Mutiny, and then Donna and Cam. So he's still saying, "Where's Cameron?" He finally sees her. Joe says, "I came straight here. I didn't know about this. I didn't know this was happening. I had no idea. Wheeler shut me out." He's wiping his face with this handkerchief, which, again, for the symbolism, resonates with what's happening here. Nobody believes him. Tom's standing there with his arms folded. We've got Bodie and Archie looking stern. Carl stands up behind them and starts coming closer. People keep standing up and walking closer and closer and sort of squeezing in on Joe. Joe panics. He's looking at Cameron, but now there's so many people in the frame to contend with. Boz steps closer. He's backing Cam up. Joe's like, "No, I'm moving to California. I gave my notice weeks ago. There's no reason I would have done this. I'm on your side. I wouldn't do this." Now we're going to get a camera angle that looks like there's a bunch of people. There's just enough of a line that the camera can see through to Joe. And we see Joe locked, his eyes are locked on Cam. And it looks like Tom's actually standing between them, but he's not. Physically, the way they're blocked, he's not. But the way this camera shows it looks like he is. Joe says, "I promise you, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do this." Nobody else has said a word. "It doesn't make any sense," he says. He looks completely disheveled. He looks pained that nobody believes him. Nobody wants to even hear any of this. He's like trying to find other things to say. "There's this guy, Jesse. He did this. I didn't. I don't. Damn it." He can't find the words. He's not in his, like, he's not fully with it right now mentally. If he weren't high, this would probably have gone down very differently, but he's just totally at a loss. He says, "I don't even work there." There's like this new hope every time he comes up with a new tactic of how to approach this. "I don't even work there. I'm going to California. Cameron, I need you to hear me." She's looking at him. It's like with this quiet look of, "You betrayed me again." But not super surprised, but like, here we are again. Boz is now going to take it upon himself to step physically in front of Cameron, between Cameron and Joe. And he says, "You need to leave." Joe's gaze has not broken from Cameron. And then he looks at Boz and he looks back at Cam and he says, "No, you don't understand." Boz says, "No, Joe." Cam just shakes her head a little bit. She's kind of slumped a little bit and she walks slowly away as everybody else stays in the room, almost in a protective way. Joe is stunned and he looks around and we just see his face between the faces of a bunch of other Mutiny boys. It's like very claustrophobic. And they're blocking his way. There's only kind of one way for him to leave, and they kind of part to let him go that way. And he leaves the house. And what a powerful scene that is. And for those of you who heard Sam's interview, Sam actually described the feeling on set that day. It was palpable for him. and felt, well, a lot like what it looks like to watch that scene, I gotta say. All right, so we're gonna go and we're gonna see the police car lights flashing. The police or the cops are driving Gordon somewhere, and Gordon's in the back seat, and he just keeps saying, "Why would she be doing this? Why would she be doing this?" Poor Gordon is so paranoid right now. He is a mess. Joe is a mess. All these people being driven around in back seats are a mess right now. Okay, so Cam, we're going to get one more scene. Cam is sitting on the floor against the IBM machines in her office. She's quiet. She's alone. And Donna's going to walk over to her, but what we see are legs because Donna's standing, Cam's sitting on the floor. So we just see Donna's like bottom half coming closer to Cam. And we hear Donna say, "Do you believe him?" The camera is slowly pushing in on Cameron. She says, "Not for a second." Donna says, "Okay, so what are we going to do now?" And Cam's silent. Donna kneels down, gets eye level with Cam. We get a close up on Donna's face. She says, "Cameron, what are we going to do now?" And it's this very like, we got to fix this somehow. Like we've got to, it's tender, but it's like, I trust that we'll come up with something. I trust that you'll come up with something. And we keep looking at Cam. We look back at Cameron now, and the music, this ominous music, is just swelling. She might have a really good bad idea. We don't know what it is, but we can see like there might be something they can do. You can see that on her face. Cameron's going to meet Donna's gaze, and that's where we close this episode. So Cameron and Donna very much they're together now. It's a good thing that they had that apologetic conversation just moments ago where Cam was like, "I value your ideas. I really do. I want to honor them and I want to make the most of them." And then Donna's thing is so valuable, it's stolen. And they are truly on the same team now because they had that conversation. It's them against the world. It's mutiny against the world. So that is this episode. It's a super cool episode. And there's a lot more to get into with the feedback as well. But first, let's talk a little bit about the music. So first of all, there was Spinning Around by a Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry. Not Red Larry, Yellow Larry. Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry. This is from 1986. And this is where Donna and Cameron are talking about rejecting the West Group offer, the fact that Cam just did it. Then we are going to get East of Eden by Lone Justice. This is a 1985 song. This is what we first hear when the mutiny party starts, when somebody, puts that first cassette into the tape player, and we hear what it is. It's East of Eden. Then we've got Police on My Back by The Clash. Now, this is actually a cover song from The Clash. They did it in 1980. There was an earlier version of this song from years earlier than that. But the Clash version of the song was from 1980. And this is when Gordon gets to the mutiny party. And by the way, Police on My Back, pretty on the nose with where things go for Gordon in this episode. Then, of course, we've got Why by Bronski Beat from 1984. This is when Joe and Sarah are dancing at the club and taking more MDMA. Then we've got a song called Chamber of Hellos by Wire Train. This is another 1984 song. This is when Boz is thanking James for coming to the party, and when Tom says, "I love you." Then there's a song, there's sort of a mix of songs where two songs are mixed together. Both of them with Sarah and Joe at the club when they go over to the sofa. The song that's playing at first when they're finishing dancing and he sort of brings her over to the sofa is Can't You See by Vicious Pink Phenomena. It's a 1985 song. And note, can't is spelled with 3 C's, okay? But then that blends into Boy by Book of Love from 1986. My favorite quotes. I'm going to give you 2 here. The honorable mention will be, I don't want to quit. I love you. Why would I quit? Have you ever had a disagreement before? That one's from Tom. And the winner for me will be a Sarah quote where she says, there will be other projects way more exciting than trying to take an oil company into the future. Ah, Sarah. Okay, so those are my favorites. Let's get into some of the feedback that I wanted to share with this episode. First of all, a piece of feedback from 207, I believe it was. No, from 206. From Andy Goldstein. Welcome, Andy. And Andy comes in with an answer to a question that was a very specific moment in my podcast where he says this, just responding to the part of your video at around 4 minutes. I worked for IEEE from 1990 to 1998. It's a professional society. The letters stand for the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Everyone pronounces it as IEEE. Thank you, Andy. I knew whatever I picked, I'd be doing it wrong. Andy continues with this, though. This is interesting. During that time, there was earnest discussion at IEEE about why there couldn't be a TV show about the lives and loves of a bunch of electrical engineers who get involved in interesting problems, just like the lawyers on LA Law or the doctors on ER, or the countless cops on the cop shows who all develop drinking problems and sleep with each other. They hoped it would have a Top Gun effect and make electrical engineering look like a glamorous profession. This was right before the internet boom showed us that money and a few tons more money would be enough to make that happen. That's pretty cool. That's a fun fact. I'm so glad I pronounced it wrong and posed it to the world to correct me, because here's Andy giving, who knew? This is exactly the person who needed to jump in with this comment. And to hear that they wanted to make something kind of Halt and Catch Fiery in their industry, very cool. I love that. How about one from Present Hour 24? Present Hour 24 had a thing to say about 206. They say, the highlight for me in this episode was the computer rewiring for Joe. It seems like Joe unfortunately has control over mutiny, and they tried to pull a fast one on him. I don't know all the technical terms, but it sounded like it was too much to do in such a quick time. And that, my friends, is why I was so excited to bring that comment in. First of all, Joe's getting a lot of fast ones pulled on him in this season, isn't he? A whole lot of people are thinking a step ahead of Joe. And in that case, in the case of 206, 10 brought 36, he figures out what the team is doing when they're trying to do the heist against him. But I had the same thought as Present Hour 24, and this might be a thought you only have if you don't know a lot about the industry, but like when they were describing all the things that they had to do to trick Joe, it sounded like too much to do in a day or even a day and a half. Like it was a very short turnaround time for what it seemed like the work was going to be. I haven't had anybody who has a lot of tech knowledge say that it wasn't realistic. So maybe it's just what sounds like a tall order to a person who's got no knowledge in that area. But Present Hour 24, I had the exact same thought as you. Was like, how is he supposed to come over like within 24 hours and you've done all this? That's crazy. But I don't know. If you're somebody who knows a lot about the tech world and it didn't feel realistic to you, I'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, it seems like this is not something that people are questioning. But thank you, Present Hour 24, for articulating what I don't know if I said it, but I was thinking, like, how are they getting all this done? Now, I also, quick pause here before I read more feedback. There's been so much cool feedback coming in. So I've just been trying to put the puzzle together of like, which episodes do I feel like there are things I want to say about that feedback that are in, future episodes. So that's part of the decision-making process that I've been making here. And it's been a fun process to have. Now, here's a comment from Frackin' Toaster Lava. Welcome back. Okay, from 107, The Giant. There's a lot of thoughts here that I'm going to tie in at the end. So Frackin' Toaster Lover says, I feel that Boz punching that guy was the turning point for him, and a symbolic one too. I think that almost every character in season one had a moment where they saw another supporting character that in a way represented all the worst things they were, have been, and could be, something they didn't want to be anymore. Gordon had Brian, who was constantly negative, defeatist, and undermining every suggestion for progress and creativity by doubting it could work, and was encouraging those traits in Gordon too. So Gordon finally realized it and cut him off. Brian also served briefly as that kind of character for Cameron when she saw someone else who was acting angry and irrational about having been slighted or insulted. And previously, these punk kids Cameron partied with were the kind of embodiment of what she could fall into but didn't want to be. Aimless, complaining about the establishment, but still wanting good things like a car without being ready to commit to work to make them happen. And for Joe, Hunt is that kind of character. Similarly, Boz, who at first seemed like a guy who makes off-color jokes and seems kind of out of place with these modern young people and the future they're trying to bring, here he makes a decision to fully commit by hitting that guy, to being a part of that new world and sacrifice everything for the future. In response to this, I had mentioned, and maybe for Donna, it's her mom. And then, this idea that Donna even went as far as to then like take her mom's identity to play the piano in front of that group later. So there is potential parallel for everybody here. And I thought that was a really interesting comment arc to make across all of season one. But here in season two, I'm feeling like that's relevant again because, okay, yeah, Hunt was like sort of the shadow side of Joe. He was like all the worst parts of Joe, perhaps. And now Joe's got two more of those people because we see Jacob plus Jesse, lots of Joes there. Lots of J's there, J names. And it's interesting to me because they're sort of like two sides of the same shadow side of Joe coin, where Jacob is late in his career, absolutely ruthless. It would seem more ruthless than Joe. And like all the things that Joe has done, but is like tried to say he wasn't doing or thought he wasn't doing or tried to soften it, Jacob won't even soften it. He just is unapologetic for the things that he does. And now he's partnered up with this guy who's the younger version of Joe, who's like this big picture visionary guy who had a lot of success and then left that world. And he's had, all this work in Tokyo. And Jesse doesn't seem to have a lot of remorse here either. So Jesse and Jacob are now a team, and they're sort of like this is the younger version of what Joe represents, and then Jacob is like what Joe could be, and it's all without the humanity behind it. So I think this trend that you're seeing, Frack and Toaster Lava, continues now if we look into season two, and it was really cool to think about your comment in that context. So thank you for that. And now from Amelia Flowers, who is commenting about 206. Amelia says, this podcast is reframing my view of season two. Evan Destray gave feedback on episode 5 that helped me think about different characters. I came to this show because of Lee Pace, so I've been on Joe's side and I've chosen to ignore or rather reframe his shenanigans as hurt and trying to make things right. It's really interesting to hear your point of view and being on Cam's side and weary of Joe. I think most people were correctly weary of Joe. I was so angry at Cam after Comdex and the porch scene, and that affected how I viewed season 2. Now I can be more objective. boy, with Gordon and Joe interfering with mutiny, absolutely Cam has every right to be angry. And I'm feeling more empathy with Sarah and Tom. The ripples of Joe and Cam's relationship are affecting them too. I'm super curious, Amelia, how you're feeling now in this episode. This is a really pivotal episode. So I was feeling pretty strong, really pissed off at Joe all the way up until this point in season 2. And with this episode, it's really interesting because I've heard the creators of the show talk on like the inside the episode where they were saying like Joe did all of these things, he had the best of intentions, but it's all blowing up in his face. And I'm sitting here thinking, did he definitely have the best of intentions, or did he just think he had the best of intentions but actually it was kind of gnarly what he was doing the whole time? Like where does it's been this whole question that we've been unpacking all season of what have Joe's intentions been, what is he able to acknowledge, and what's happening under the surface, like subconsciously for him. And this is all a big question here. But I think this idea that like Joe coming into the mutiny house and saying, this wasn't me, it wasn't me, it was that guy, it was that guy over there, and it was Jacob, it was Jesse, it was like, it wasn't me. But it also was, because none of this would have happened if Joe hadn't moved actually heaven and earth to get into mutiny to begin with. Like the number of steps that Joe took to set all this up for Jacob is outrageous. Like so many steps, all initiated by Joe. And then at the last second, when Joe pulls the business deal out from under Jacob, the business deal that Cam had already agreed to, Jacob just spins it around. Jacob did one thing, Joe did like 20, so it's sort of this like, I don't know. And then this feeling that Cam always had of like, when's the other shoe going to drop? You brought Joe into this world. When is it all going to come to ruin? So it's like the least surprising thing to us as viewers to see it all come apart. It's cool to see how it came apart, but it's like, yeah, of course it was going to come apart. So I think it's interesting to see like all of this sort of unfold. It's like in this moment you want to have compassion for Joe, but it's also like you literally set this whole thing up. You were absolutely Jacob's accomplice here, whether you intended to be or not. So to say not my fault is wrong. But so Amelia, I'm going to need your takes on this now. Like, how are you feeling after this episode? Okay, you found your way to a place where you're like, I'm seeing a different side, but do you now? Like, I don't know. Do you feel bad for Joe coming off of this episode? Do you feel like, yeah, this is your fault too? Where'd you land? And we'll all hopefully come around on Joe at some point or other, but where do you sit now? So thank you for that. And now for Synthetic Gerbil, who had feedback that I wanted to share from a couple different episodes. So Synthetic Gerbil first said a comment to 202 that I'd like to bring in here. I think considering what I was thinking with Joe trying to get back to Cameron, either consciously or not, I think he jumped at the job with Jacob Wheeler's company so he would have a reason to move back to Dallas and of course have the money to do so since the guy is broke right now. I think he didn't even bother to look for a job in Austin because he already had a ticket out of there, and it would have been strange had he actually been looking for jobs in Dallas on his own. So I brought that in to discuss here because I too have been beating the drum that all of this was in service of going back to Cam. But here he is married to Sarah trying to get away and go to California. So why? Maybe it's just that he's had all this interaction now with Cam in season 2 and she doesn't seem to be budging. She doesn't want anything to do with him. Her maybe working with him had only to do with it being the best thing for her team, but not because she wanted to do anything with him. And then she was all too glad to take his advice of not signing the deal with West Group because in her mind, that would also mean not having to work with him. Yes, it was about preserving and protecting the Mutiny Games division, but she also wouldn't have to work with Joe if she said no to the deal. So the fact that Joe was endorsing that, all the more reason, right? So is it just because he didn't really have any movement with her at all, and so he's just resigned to being with Sarah and starting over and moving to a new city and like being a fresh version of Joe? I'm curious where you're landing with that synthetic gerbil, because I think we're on the same page that we feel like there was an objective to get to Cam here, that it feels like he's moved all the way away from that at the start of this episode. But then the idea that Cam would think all of this Westnet stuff was his fault was so much that he diverts the car from going to California to stopping at the Mutiny House to make sure Cam has heard him out. And I think he's pained when he realizes that everybody there thinks this is his fault. So why does he feel like he needs to do that? You know, he was just about to get out and get a fresh start, and he wasn't going to see these folks again. So it's an interesting time to take a look at that whole motivation there. Now, okay, let's look at a comment from 205 from Synthetic Gerbil, who says, I think with the tubes, so if you remember, folks, Tom was looking at a complex system of like funnels and tubes on a wall before he came up with some ideas for extract and defend. And I was like, what is he looking at? And I've had a few different people say it's for hamsters or gerbils or rodents. It is an actual tunnel for pets. And then Synthetic Gerbil came in with this. I think with the tubes, they're trying to hint that the game might be inspired by the early multiplayer game Midi Maze. At least that's what I gleaned from some of the forums I've poked around on, that of what game would be time appropriate. It's funny that Tom said he felt like the game should start by crawling through an air duct. Well, he could maybe be referring to another game. What comes to mind to me is Metal Gear Solid or Metal Gear 2. Both games would have been released many years later, so I felt like maybe it was a bit of fourth wall fun. I love those references. That's a fun one for people to look at. And then when I looked at when I looked at the Midi Maze game, it was such an 80s game. I think it was like 87. So yeah, it would be after this time. And then Metal Gear Solid was 98, I want to say. So a little over 10 years separation between those games in real life. And the graphics between them are wildly, like you can see what an advancement there was in between those games being released. But it's fun to see what games this made you think of. And yeah, those games were years ahead for the people in this show, the characters in this show, but the people who worked on this show, the writers, the creators, who knows who wanted to throw a reference like that in here as a nod to games that they loved playing. So who knows if anybody else has other games they think that might have been nodding to, feel free to jump in with that. All right, folks. We've reached that time. It's Evan the Stray. Now, Evan wants to start with some thoughts about episode 7, the episode that we just watched previously. And Evan says, regarding Gordon's chronic toxic encephalopathy, I'm getting better at saying that with practice. Thank you. Thank you for always writing out the full word, Evan. So regarding his diagnosis and memory slips, I had a bit of a lightning bulb moment when remembering Gordon in season 1, episode 1, in the pilot, approximately 17 minutes, 42 seconds into the episode, not remembering what he wrote in Byte. This is the Small Systems Journal that Joe quoted to him. This puts the future squarely in the hands of those who know computers, not for what they are, but for everything they have the potential to be. This just before Joe's famous line of computers aren't the thing, they're the thing that gets us to the thing. Then, what's the name of the article that Gordon authored? The Future of Open Architecture. Now back to season 2, episode 7, Gordon's initial speech he's giving to the guys in his garage near the beginning of the episode, approximately at 13 minutes, 13 seconds. When he's pitching the guys on his business plan, he says, open architecture, baby. This scene was before his memory slip scene, approximately at 28:38, where he says, just 2 weeks ago, I was ready to walk into Joe's office and tell him that a portable under 15 pounds couldn't be done. This, to me, means that the show's storyline contributors want us to understand Gordon's condition can be seen as early as the pilot episode, which kind of mingles with Susan's question to Donna about how far back Gordon's condition can be noticed. What a cool thing to bring up. So Jennifer Roner in a previous episode had mentioned, I think it was season 1, episode 5, that she found a tremor in one of Gordon's hands when he was working. And she was like, maybe that's our first instance. And gosh, if something like this was planted as early as the pilot, and I've heard people say that they didn't necessarily, like, they wouldn't have known as early as the pilot that they would be setting up for Gordon to have an illness. And that's fair. But if you look back, we can find reference to it as early as the pilot. I think that the tremor in Gordon's hand that Jennifer noticed feels like intentional from many different people who would have worked on the show. Like, the actor had to do it. The editors had to use that take. Like, there had to be a lot of different pieces that went into getting that on screen. But hey, we could be looking at a reference as early as the pilot. And now for Evan's thoughts on episode 8, the one we're on right now. Evan says, there was much humor I found in this episode until there wasn't. This was probably intentional to intensify the shock at the end. And what a shock it was. Yeah. Oof. It feels like it all comes crashing down for us in this episode. Evan says, thrice strikes the root and spud trio, black and white on canvas. Hey, let's keep it fresh. But in all seriousness, I do like your 2 against 1 inference title. The painting just feels so covertly malevolent and uncomfortable to me that I have to make light of it. It's kind of a Blair Witch vibe. Yep, Evan and I have feelings about this painting in Jacob's office. Our feelings are strong and deep, and we don't like it. The painting's fine. It just, it always seems to bring about an imagery that makes you feel uncomfortable. Evan says, LOL, 80s pop culture served me well. About 6:30 into the episode, Cameron, Donna, and Bosworth are talking near the refrigerator. There's a picture on the refrigerator of 4 women wearing bathing suits. My eye is drawn to it. I pause to determine if anyone looks familiar, and then I'm struck with a metaphorical bolt of lightning. I recognize the picture, and it's from the movie Valley Girl from 1983. I remember that beach scene well. The one piece is worn by actor Michelle Mayring. She was also in the great movie Real Genius from 1985, along with Deborah Foreman. Cracking myself up here. Granted, I'm watching on a large screen, so that small detail is more noticeable. What I love about this is that Evan and I have now had so much like sort of feedback, reaction, commentary through YouTube that when I watched this scene, I saw that the freezer door was open, or the fridge door, and Cam had her face right by it for this part of the scene. And I thought, boy, there's a lot of stuff hanging on that fridge. I wonder what all that stuff is. I should stop the screen and look at it. And then I didn't. And Evan, here we go. Evan just did all the research that I didn't do. I don't know how I ever would have found that answer. So thank goodness, Evan, we needed you here with that detail, because that, not knowing anything about Valley Girl, like, what does that add to the viewing of the scene other than 4 girls in bathing suits and all the guys that you wanted that on the fridge? That kind of tracks, but is there a story point there as well? Okay, Evan says, Gordon took out way too many ads, 250 PC orders between the 3 of them. They're going to drown at their build rate of 2 days per the last episode, right? It is a lot. It's a lot to ask. So, Larry and Ed perhaps made a sensible choice. It just wasn't the friend choice. Skylar Aston as Jesse Evans is in this episode. Totally forgot. I enjoy this guy's recent comedic work, though he's been unlucky with the shows he's in lasting. Good to know. I don't believe I've seen this actor in anything else. So it's cool that there's a fan out there who likes his other work. Joe looks like the bottom of his stomach fell out. Like he just found out he gave away the jackpot winning lottery ticket as Jesse is explaining his plans for expansion. So, that's an interesting take. And I didn't even really go there. Jesse is coming out of the world that Joe is going into thinking this is the cool option. So I wonder if there's a little fear of missing out there for Joe. Like, oh man, I'm walking away. And was this the idea that I should be with the whole time? Of course, there's so much baggage that comes with that for Joe. Joe is making a choice not to walk away from West Group, but to walk away from being Jacob, to walk away from hurting Sarah, hurting Cam, hurting everybody in his world just to do the work thing. LOL, some fun comedy scenes at the Mutiny customer appreciation party. Love awkward comments such as Fat Donna, full quote later by Moonchaser. Okay, that's a little teaser for us. Moon landing conspiracy by Carl, and weird Boz has a son by Bodhi. Yeah, there was some cool stuff. I just thought it was funny to keep tracking Boz's introductions of James. That was just like he approached everybody at the most horrible time. He didn't really prep for this. He didn't prep anybody for this. Police on My Back by The Clash can be heard at the Mutiny Party when Gordon arrives and begins to exhibit irrational thoughts around business competition. This is on the official Halt and Catch Fire soundtrack. Okay, cool. They picked that song. I haven't looked to see what's officially on the actual soundtrack. Seems like I wonder what the choices are there. Like that doesn't seem like one of those songs where you're like, oh yeah, Police on My Back. Of course, I associate that with Halt. It seems like a small moment of a scene, but it made it to the soundtrack. Tom is feeling uneasy about blurting out, "I love you" to Cam earlier. He's asking her on the deck to reciprocate to make it less uncomfortable. All I can hear practically blaring in my head is the Beatles song "The Word" from Rubber Soul, 1965, while he's trying to persuade Cam. It's an okay song, but that's one of the Beatles albums which live in my head like help. Me too. Say the word and you'll be free. Say the word and be like me. Say the word I'm thinking of. Have you heard the word is love? I have a friend from middle school and high school, Kate. Shout out to Kate, who introduced me to many cool musical things at around that middle school, high school age. And one of them, of the many eclectic things she liked, was Rubber Soul, which will always be the coolest Beatles album for me. So I know the word, okay? But Cam does not. Cam does not. It's a good reference. I like that. Evan says, wow, I definitely wasn't as emotionally invested in Mutiny with the other rewatches because I genuinely forgot the details of how this situation with West Group went down. We're slowly seeing Jake the Snake reveal himself the last 2 episodes. His philosophy is clearly if you can't buy them, clone them and redirect the highway to the clone. Seeing a lot of intra-episodal foreshadowing with Cam's insistence to copy protect the game code to help ensure nobody eats Mutiny's lunch, much to this discomfort of Tom. It is so funny how a deep dive unearths things that you just didn't see before or it wasn't as resonant to you as some other detail. There have been things like that have certainly come up for me already in this rewatch. And this sounds like it's one for you where just the amount of time and energy we've been spending with the Mutiny team on a deep dive has given us a little bit more to latch onto here to realize how much it's coming crashing down right now. But yeah, that Jacob, what a guy. Okay, so let's look at this. It's a peculiar string of events leading to Joe's knowledge of the WestNet network overlay. The high rolling with Sarah and sneaking into West Group's server room to have coitus with Sarah, then spy on Jesse's team. His timing and arrival at Mutiny couldn't have been worse. I'm unsure how his intoxicated state would impact his reception by the team, but I'm guessing it's at least more irritating to hear his barely coherent explanation. The scene is oozing such an anxious, dark atmosphere from the apparent collapse of mutiny and Joe's fear of losing Cam forever. Fear of loss has to be such a debilitating haunt for Joe. The loss of his mom when Joe was 12 years old, plus a cold militaristic father as the remaining parent. No acceptance, no comfort, only poisonous loneliness remains. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's ever a good time for Joe to show up at Mutiny with this news, but I think just as Donna and Cam have gotten onto exactly the same page, that's not great for Joe. The fact that Joe is not able to articulate himself the way he normally would, that's certainly not great for Joe. I think the fact that this whole group is coming off of a party where they were bonding together and everybody was celebrating their work and their future, that's not great for Joe. It's a lot to take in. And you know, I don't know that this ever would have been a well-received moment for Joe, but it certainly wasn't going to be here. So yeah, it's ominous for sure. And now quotes, Evan's favorite quotes, which happen, I think, to be completely different than mine, which is fun when that happens. Evan has a third runner-up quote. You're Donna Clark. I pictured you as fat, like really fat, says Moonchaser. Second runner-up, Stan says, "'Cause you're in my garage in the middle of the night accusing me of stealing from you." Yeah, it's true. I mean, why on earth would anybody think Gordon's not all right? First runner-up from Joe. I feel like there's a lot of goodness in me, a lot of greatness, but I can't get it out of me. I can't give it to the world. I have ideas. I'm not an echo. I make things in my mind, but I can't get them into the world. I can't get past this body. Well, heart, body. It's like a trap. Like the world won't see the me, the real me. It's articulate, not at the same time, you know, because he's, you know, just had MDMA. What are you gonna do? But I missed the line about I'm not an echo when I was reading it back. That's pertinent, and I think that's going to come up again for Evan in a second. The winner, the quote winner, is also from Joe. The future is bearing down on us like a freight train, and nobody sees it. Yeah. This makes me think of something somebody says in season 3 that I am not going to say because we haven't mentioned that character yet, but I want to see if this will connect later. Okay. P.S. from Evan. Joe has really held on to Cam's dressing down of him at Mutiny's door. The echo rebuttal is front and center of his mind while he's rolling in the club with his new wife. But in all fairness, it was a brutal confrontation from Cam Van Dam, from a person he held in such a position of greatness. He sees her as brilliant, passionate, and beautiful. Yeah, I missed that he said echo. And that word choice matters a lot. Because yes, that is a word that she used. It was an insult to him that she said at his doorstep after at the very end of season 1. And that's something that's so front of mind. It's coming up even in this state. So, wow. Good. That was a good spot for you, Evan. I like that. That was really good. It was a hard word to hear actually for me, but now that I know what it is, I'd probably recognize it if I heard it again. Amazing. This is a boy, things are coming tumbling down in this episode. I think we're all seeing it. So what could possibly happen in the next one? We're going to find out. Thank you everybody for joining me. And until next time, go out there and watch Halt and Catch Fire. Bye everyone.